Akiva makes sense. It's two separate isurim. It's not lo yekadek. It's two separate isurim. Chodem lo tishkav. Chodem lo tishkav. Give Rabbi Shmuel, according to Shmuel, this word comes up to be, according to Shmuel, this last. Enochayev. Ela'achas, you only chayev one. Idi lo yikadesh. They're both coming from lo yikadesh. The Gemara says, usually look here, idi lo yikadesh. Abaya Omar, even according to Shmuel, nami chayev shayim. You can still have chayev shayim if he's the subject of both a zachar and an animal. The siv called shokhet, the name of the humas, the name of the shokhet, the name of the shkav. If you don't need that passage to tell you the halacha, just mentioned before, for a shokhet, you could borrow it when the Torah uses this shkav. Get the same word, just like the shokhet, there's a punishment, there's a warning. Avol haba, ala zachar. A person who is the active member in being bala zachar, they be zachar Allah, and he also brought a zachar on him. Or habal behema, person who is bala behema, behema Allah. All those cases together. Now, Bain Rabbo, Bain Labaya, Rabbi Shmuel chayev shalosh. According to Shmuel, you chayev 2 times. Kiva chayev shayim. According to Kiva, you only chayev twice. Let's go a little further. Turn our bottom. Zachar. It says in the pasuk Zachar with the vav. Lo asu bo katan kegada. Did not make a katan like a gada. Now, as we said, when it came to an animal, we equated katan and the gada. Behema, when it came to a person who shochet with the behema, asuba kitana kigedola. We did equate a kitana and a gedola. Make the difference how all the animals. Now the Gemara says, what does this mean? Mai lo asuba katan kigedola. What does it mean? Did it make it a child like a gedola? Amarav lo asu biak pachos kibentesha shanim kibentesha shanim. We did not make the bia of a child who's 9, who's less than 9, like a child who is 9. We'll explain this in a minute. Shmuel says, "Lo asabiyas kachas shalosh kiben shalosh." We didn't make the bia of a ben shalosh of less than 3 years. Like 3 years. What's the argument over here? Rav Sarah called the Isa B'Shok and Isa B'Nishkav, called the less B'Shok and less B'Nishkav. So if a person can be a Boel, he can be in B'Nishkav. The love of Mishkav Ishik Siv, that's in Mishkav. In other words, as follows. We know that halacha is that the bia of a male child under the age of 9 is not considered a bia. We do not assume that a child under the age of 9 has the ability to be able to perform a bia. Similarly, halachically speaking, a bia of a girl, Pachas Mishalom, is not considered to be a bia. The question just is, when you have the male child who is the subject, as disturbing as this whole conversation is, the question just is, you equate a male child to a female child. To say, well, since the male child can perform a bia above the age, cannot perform a bia until the age of 9, therefore the subject, if the child is the subject, then it will not be considered to be a bia until the child is 9. Or do you say, and hold on, this Isha, it's like this bia, so just like when it comes to a girl, 3 is the cutoff, and not 9. That's my focus. That's what Gemara says. What's my focus? Rav Samar called Yis B'Shokhet, Yis B'Nishkav. If the child's old enough to be the Shokhet, he's old enough to be the Nishkav. Well, the less B'Shokhet, he's not old enough to be a Shokhet. In other words, he's less than 9, less B'Nishkav. If the male's going to engage with him, an older, a gadol to engage with him, then less of B'Nishkav is not, again, no one's condoning this behavior. The question just is whether there's a chiyuv nisa in this case, then less of a nishkav, then it's not going to qualify as a nishkav in that case. Shmuel says mishkavei isha ksiv has to be mishkavei isha, and therefore mishkavei isha. What's the cutoff for mishkavei isha? 3 years old, and therefore you'll give the zachar the halacha of a female in this context. Stop here for today. Everyone have a wonderful day. What's so fun?
Mark is so disgusting. There's like pictures of Shabby in it. Okay, good morning, everyone. Today's daf is daf and daled. We left.
He treats Brian so bad, it makes me feel like I need to treat Gerardo better.
Off yesterday on daf and Gimel base, and we're going to be four lines up from the bottom. So what we were dealing with there was that in the Mishnah we had a machlokas between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanakama held that if someone has relations with his mother, that person is liable for two lavim, for two Isurei lav. What are they? First of all, because it's his mother, and second of all, because it is the wife of his father. We also talked about the fact that it could, as Tosus mentioned yesterday, it could also be HST. But in any event, that the Tanakama holds that they're chayav for both for the father and for both he's chayav for both over there, the father's wife and the mother. And the Rabbi Yehuda held that he's only chayav for the mother. We spent time yesterday trying to figure out what's Rabbi Yehuda's source. So the first source that we tried to bring was Abaye, and actually we have it here, but in our Abaye tried to bring it from the pasuk in Vayikra Yutes, where it says Imcha hi, it is your mother, to say that you're only liable for Imcha. What happened? That we rejected that for two reasons. The Gemara asked two kashas on that. The Gemara's first kasha was that if that's true, that Imcha hi tells you that it's just your mother and not your father's wife, then similarly you should argue in the pasuk that says Erva Savicha, who that we say in Vayikra Yud Ches, which is so that therefore, if so, Erva Savicha, who should tell you that Erva Savicha should tell you also that you're chayav only for your father's wife, but not for the mother, which would produce this strange result, as the Gemara mentioned yesterday, that you would have a man who has relations with his mother who's not his father's wife is chayav, or with his father's wife who's not his mother is chayav. But if it was his mother who was also his father's wife, then he wouldn't be chayav. That would be a bizarre result. That was question number one. And question number two was, if Imcha hi is a valid limud to tell you that someone is only chayav for relations with their mother, but not for their father's wife, then why would then the Rabbanan would have to deal with that pasuk, and they should produce the same result. And they should say like Rabbi, so that someone is chayav only for their mother, but not for Savicha. So we rejected that answer. The Gemara is actually going to go back to that answer to say that it's Imcha hi, but we're going to do it in a way that answers those two questions. So what is that? Amar Rava, with his mother, comes from the pasuk as follows. Erva is generally understood, Erva Savicha lo segala, that a person should not have relations with his father. What Rava today's how we learned this, but Erva Savicha is a reference to the wife. So this is Eisha Savicha. And then, so Gemara says, Eisha Savicha, Umaisi lo b'gzer shava. We're going to see soon in Gzer shava, how does he know that Erva Savicha is a reference to the father's wife? Umashma bein Eisha Savicha shehi imo bein Eisha, regardless of whether or not it's his mother, this is the wife of his father, right? So that's how you know wife of the father. You know Eisha Savicha minayin. What happens for his mother who is not the husband of his father, i.e. that this child was born, the child who had relations with his mother was born out of wedlock. Talmulomar Ervat Imcha lo segala. So that's the second part of the puzzle. So we say That's how we know his mother, who was not married to his father. Then the pasuk continues, Imchahi, and the way we're understanding now is Mishum Ima that he's only chayav for his mother, not for the wife of his father. So what do we have? We have the first pasuk, the way that we're understanding is that Ervas Avicha is a reference to father's wife, whether his mother or not. Ervas Imchalos Segala is a reference to his mother, whether married. Ervas Avicha. So we were saying Ervas Avicha includes whether it's his mother or not, and now we're saying no. The part that it says even if it's his mother, that we're knocking out, because Imchahi knocks out the part that says it's his mother and tells you that if we're dealing in a case where it is both the wife of the father and his mother, since we had yesterday when we tried using Imchahi, the first question was. The first question was, you produce, if you say that Imchahi tells you your mother and not the wife of your father, the Gemara asked and said, Ervas Avichahu should tell you the opposite, that it's the wife of your father, but not your mother. So that you would that it was his mother and the wife of his father, you'll be putter. So we say, no. Now it's not a problem, because once you understand that Ervas Avicha is a reference to the wife of the father, right? So now you have wife of the father and mother who's not a wife in the same pasuk, and Imchahi can then modify something that's in the pasuk, which would be wife of the father. However, Ervas Avichahu cannot be modifying. In other words, the Gemara's kata was, let that modify a case where it's his mother, right? Because this pasuk is only talking about wife of the father, not actual mother. So Ervas Avichahu has nothing to go on to negate it and say it's not that he can't be chayav for relations with his Avicha, which is wife of the father and mother, and therefore Imchahi can come and modify Ervas Avicha. So that's why we're not worried that we darshan Imchahi but don't darshan Ervas Avicha. So that's the answer to the Gemara's first question. The Gemara's second question was, if you're right that Imchahi is such a good drasha, then the Rabbanon should also make the same result as Rabbi Yehuda, where Imchahi modifies Ervas Avicha to say that he's only chayav for his mother, but not for his father's wife. This whole thing is based on Rabbi Yehuda's understanding of Ervas Avicha, which we're going to learn in the G'der Shabbat. That Rabbi Yehuda's understanding that Ervas Avicha, he can modify it. But according to the Rabbanon, the pasuk Ervas Avicha is actually a relationship with his father. That he shouldn't have mishkav dacha with his father. If you only have Ervas Imcha Lo Tegala, which is talking about his mother, so then Imcha he has nothing to go on where it's the Rabbanon. So we've now answered. We're not worried about Ervas Avichahu because it has nothing to modify. Only Imcha he has something to modify. And we're not worried that Chazal should make the same drasha as Rabbi Yehuda from Imchahi because they disagree fundamentally about what the beginning of the pasuk is talking about. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's talking about the wife of the father, Rabbanan holds it's talking about having relations with the father. Okay, so that is the answer for how Rabbi Yehuda knows it. Now, we reference Rabbi Yehuda making G'der Shabbat. The Gemara is going to bring a brayta that supports Rava's answer, and we're going to get into this whole thing in a little bit more detail. And it's technical, that's why we're doing the visual aid today. We'll see if this works. Okay, so Tanya Kavati de Rava. We learned the brayta in accordance with Rava. What Rava was explaining that the main chiddush of Rava was that Rabbi Yehuda learns Ervas Avicha to include the wife of the husband. Now, Rashi points out, how do you know that this brayta you're going to bring is in fact the view of Rabbi Yehuda? Because the brayta we're going to bring is from Safra, and we know that Stam Safra Rabbi Yehuda. That anytime the Gemara brings the Safra, anytime that you have plain Safra, that's Rabbi Yehuda. So we know this is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, and we're going to bring from Safra. We're going to see that Rabbi Yehuda in fact holds like Rava just said and how he dashes this pasuk. So here we go. Ish Prasla Katan. So it's talking about someone who the Ish Asher Yishkav as Eshes Aviv, right? That's the pasuk we're going to dash. And we say as follows: Ish Prasla Katan. To tell you that if a Katan has relations with the wife of his father, he's not chayav. After Yishkav es Eshes Aviv, so he says, who has relations with the wife of his father, Masna Bein Eshes Aviv Tehi Imo, Ubein Eshes Aviv Shelo Imo, right? So this is telling you that relations with the wife of his father, whether it's his mother or not, is in. Now we're talking about the end of the pasuk is written most yimtu names man bum. So what are we talking about? It's telling you the punishment. So we know every avera in the Torah, we need the onish and the azara. We need both the punishment and the warning. So the punishment we're going to deal with first. Isha Shayishka Vadesha and Onish is going to get killed. Now the pasuk continues. Married to his father, i.e., he was born out of wedlock. That's covered. Where do we know that from? Tamalomar Ervas Aviv Gila. So he says, I'm going to learn it from this pasuk Ervas Aviv Gila that he exposed the erva of his father. Now that does not in any way apply to a woman who is not married to his father. Why? Because a woman who's not married to his father is not considered ervas aviv. It's not considered the erva of his father. So how does he learn it? He's saying mufna lahakish v'lodon mimenet der shava. That's therefore these words. What do you need these words? Should be enough. Why do you need to say ervas aviv gila? It must be coming based on the der shava that we're going to learn shortly to tell you that not only is he chayav for wife of his father, but also chayav for his mother who is not married to his father. And then the Gemara is going to continue darshan in the pasuk. Most yomtu that they will surely die for skila. That this is with stoning. Now the Gemara says, the Gemara says, well, how do I know it's stoning? Now we should know this from yesterday, what the Gemara is about to say. The Gemara says, the Nemer Ba'ovi Yadoni Demayim Bum, that we know that it says here, the pasuk continues, most yumtu shnehem Demayim Bum, and we know that the pasuk by Ovi Yadoni, which explicitly says that when you have someone who serves Ovi Yadoni, who does Ovi Yadoni, that commutes with the dead, that person, it says that you stone them. But just like by Ovi Yadoni you stone, so here also you stone. And we had this yesterday when we were talking about Rabbi and Ravina, that the limud of Ovi Yadoni is from the word Demayim Bum. Okay, so that's where we are. Malahel Beskila, not Kam Beskila, so that tells you that this is Kila. Okay, so the Gemara says, fine. So we now have Onish Shamanu, we've heard this, Azhara Minayim. Where do we know the Azhara? So the Onish, wife of father, whether it's mother or not, mother, whether wife of father or not. Okay, Talmud Lomer. So now, how do we know the Azhara? Talmud Lomer, Ervas Avicha Lo Segala, that the erva of the father you should not uncover. Ervas Avicha Zu Eshes Avicha. So he says this is talking about the wife of the father. So right here, by the way, is where we're going to know that this brisa is Rabbi Yehuda, because what did we say just now in Amar Beis, Rava's answer? The chiddush of Rava's understanding of Rabbi Yehuda is that he understands these words, Ervas Avicha, to mean the wife of the father, not talking about having relations with his father. So therefore, this is the proof, by the way, that Rabbi Yehuda, with this whole purpose, we're bringing this brisa because we want to show, like Rabbi, that Rabbi Yehuda darshans these words, Eretz Avicha, to mean the wife of the husband. So the brisa says, Eretz Avicha lo tegala, Eretz Avicha zu eshes Avicha. This is a reference to wife of the father. So the Gemara says, well, how do I know? Ata omer Eretz Avicha, eino ela Eretz Avicha mamish. So he says, well, how do I know that? Maybe it is a case of that it's talking about he shouldn't have mishkadaka with his father. So the Gemara says, no, because Nemer Khan, Ervas Avicha lo tegala, the Nemer lahalan, Ervas Aviv Gila. So he says that it's going to make as follows. Remember, we said these words were extra. We're going to make their Shava now. So he says as follows. It says Ervas Ervas Avicha Lo Segala. It says Ervas Avicha Lo Segala, following like that. So he says to the husband, he says, I'm going to make a Zer Shava to Ervas Aviv Gila, this pasuk up here. Once I have that Zer Shava, this pasuk is very clearly talking about someone who has relations with the wife of his father. So we say, just as here the pasuk is talking about wife of the father, so too here we're going to be talking. Eretz Avicha Lo Tegala is talking about wife of the father. So is not talking about Mishkav Dachar with the father, but rather is talking about wife of the father. So Mala Halam the Isha Sakat Medaber. Just like in this pasuk, clearly it's talking about a marriage. Eshes Aviv. Akam the Isha Sakat Medaber. Therefore, here also it's talking about wife of the father. Umashma, and the fact that here it's his mother, not Mashma Bein Eshes Aviv Imo. That regardless of whether or not it's his mother, if it's a wife of his father, then he's Kaya. Now continues the pasuk, continues the limud, and how do I know if his mother bore him out of wedlock, meaning she was not married to the father? That it says Eretz Imcha Lo Tegala is coming to tell you that even his mother, who was not married to the father. Okay? So he says, now the Gemara is going to have a little bit of a funny language, but basically what it's coming back to is saying as follows. So he says as follows. Now this is really the Gzeir Shabbat that we referenced earlier, but he's saying as follows, that I see in the Azhara, in the pasuk of Azhara, that it compares his mother that is not the wife of his father to the mother who is the wife of the father, because you have both of them in the same pasuk. But how do I know that at the onesh level? So we say, Nemer kan Eretz Avicha Lo Tegala, it's written here, Eretz Avicha Lo Tegala. The Nemer Lahalon is written up here, Eretz Aviv Ilo, Ma Bi'azhara Asa Kasat Imo, She'eno Eshes Aviv, Imo Shehi Eshes Aviv, just like in this pasuk, it compares when it's the wife of the father and it's the mother who is not married to him. So too, therefore, this pasuk also is talking about both, which tells you that both for purposes of onesh and for azhara, that the psukim based on that Gzeir Shabbat between Eretz Avicha Lo Tegala and Eretz Aviv Gila is coming to tell you that both of them, both the onesh and azhara, apply to wife of the father as well as his mother who's not the wife of the father. Okay? So therefore, so therefore, just like in Azhara, we have both wife of father and mother, so to here, by the onesh, we have wife of father and mother. So now continues the Brisa, and this is the second aspect of what we're proving, Rabbi. The pasuk continues, Imchahi. What does Imchahi tell you? Mishum imo atamachayvo, bi'atamachayvo mishum eishes of. That we're going to say that Imchahi comes to negate what we were learning from Eretz Avicha. From Eretz Avicha, we were learning wife of the father, whether it's his mother or not. And now we're saying Imchahi tells you, sorry, he's not Chaya for wife of his father if it's also his mother. Right? So therefore, this is coming to tell you only wife of the father who's not his mother, and this is coming to tell you mother who's not the wife of the father. But if there would be only a case of mother, Imchahi negates the limud that Eretz Avicha, wife of the father, applies even when it's his mother, and therefore, if this negates that aspect of Eretz Avicha, what are we left with? We're left with that when a person has relations with his mother, who's also the wife of the father, that person is only chayav for Imchahi, because Imchahi took out of Eretz Avicha the liability for relations with his mother who's married to his father, Eshes Avicha. So that's how we're going to learn. Okay, so now we've completed the Brisa. What have we proven from this Brisa? On the base that we actually did this morning, Rabbi said that the reason Imchahi can modify this pasuk, but we're not worried about Eretz Avicha, is because Imchahi negates half of what we learned from Eretz Avicha, to say that Imchahi tells you he's only chayav for relations with his mother, who's the wife of his father. He's only chayav for the mother part because of the word Imchahi. So we've now seen a Brisa that very clearly says exactly the way Rabbi explains Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so now we have to figure out some things that are missing. Rabbanan, Rabbanan, what do the Rabbanan do with this pasuk of Eretz Avicha? So we had Eretz Avicha, which should come to tell us Eretz Avicha, which is modified by Imchahi, should come to tell you that you're chayav only on relations with the mother, but not for the wife of his father when he has relations with his mother, who is the wife of his father. Why don't the Rabbanan learn like that? So the Rabbanan say very simple why I don't learn like that, because I don't believe that Eretz Avicha is talking about relations with the wife of the father. I think Eretz Avicha is talking about having relations with your father. So that's what it says. Rabbanan, what do the Rabbanan say? They say Eretz Avicha mamish. So the Gemara says, well, if you're coming to tell me that the pasuk is coming to tell you that you can't have relations with your father, what do I need this pasuk for? He says the pasuk says that a person should not have a homosexual relation. So what do I need it to tell me that I shouldn't have relations with my father? I'm not having relations with any man. So the Gemara says to make him chayav for two. And what does that mean? We learned yesterday that obviously, if we're talking about killing him, he gets killed for even one. What's the point of two? Is to say that if somehow he did it by accident, and by accident doesn't mean fully by accident, it means for whatever reason he thought it was permitted, that he has to bring two chatas helper. Because Rabbi Yehuda, this is similar like we learned like Rabbi Yehuda, which is different than Rabbi Yehuda, who we've been dealing with, is Rabbi Yehuda. Some Rabbi Yehuda, Nakri Habala Aviv Chayev Shtayim. That it says a Nakri. Now we're going to see tomorrow in a moment. That does not mean really a Nakri. It means a Jew. It says a Jew who comes on his father is Chayev Shtayim. What are the two? He's Chayev for Ervat Avicha Lo Segala, that you shouldn't have relations with your father, and he's chayav for the Zakar Lo Tishkav Mishkav Isha, that you shouldn't have Mishkav Zakar, so he's chayav too. Similarly, Habal Achi Aviv chayav Shtayim, that someone who has relations chayav Shtayim. Why? Because how do we know? Because the pasuk says. It says Ervat Avicha Lo Segala. I'm sorry. Well, basically, the pasuk says that someone cannot uncover the erva. Okay, the erva achi avicha lo segala. The pasuk says that the erva of the brother of your father you should not uncover. Now, you might say, so you might say that is maybe that's talking about his wife and not about having relations with the uncle himself. So we say no, because at the end of the pasuk it says his wife expressly. So therefore, in the beginning when it says achi avicha, it must be talking about not having homosexual relations with him. So what do you see? The Yehuda is saying that you're chayav two, right? So if you're chayav two, that if you're chayav two, it must be one because of Eretz Avicha or Eretz Achi Avicha, and the other because of the general prohibition on homosexuality. Okay. So Amar Rabba says, Nistabra Milta, the Rabbi Yehuda, Yisrael, the Shogeg, Ubekarbar. So he says, what we're focused on right now is, why does it say Nasri? If you tell me it's a Jew, and we're talking about where he did it by accident, meaning he didn't realize that he was doing something wrong, and we're talking about Karbanas, so then it's significant to understand why he would be chayav twice. But if we're talking behind the kamar Nasri, and then why would it say Nasri? Listen to Mali. So that makes sense. But the Isa Kedaita, but if you would think that Nasri Mamish, so if you think that it's literally saying that a guy is chayav double misa, dino ma'inihu. What's the halacha of a guy who has homosexual relations? Katla, he gets killed. Betray katli play. Are you going to kill him twice? It doesn't make sense. If you're talking about being over on two death penalties, it's only relevant to talking about a Jew who did it without realizing he did it, so we're not actually killing him, and now he has to bring a korban, so he has to bring two korbanos because he was over on two lavim. So what do you see? You see that literally that the Rabbanan explained Ervat Avicha to mean a prohibition literally on having relations, a man to have relations with his father, and that's why we know he's chayav twice. Once for Eretz Avicha and once for the regular prohibition on Mishkav Zakar. Okay, so the Gemara says, Haninami Hafi. So we learned another brayta that says similar to this. Habal Aviv Chayiv Shtayim. Habal Achi Aviv Chayiv Shtayim. That someone who comes has relations with his father, man has relations with his father, does two lavim. And similarly, someone has relations with his uncle is chayav twice. Okay, so now the question would be, on its face, this would seem to negate Ika the Amri, the Lo Rabbi Yehuda. So some say that this brayta that talks about him being chayav twice is not like Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because remember, Rabbi Yehuda learned that Erva Savicha is talking about wife of his father. Is not talking about homosexual relations with his father. So therefore, the only thing that Rabbi Yehuda has, if someone has relations with his father, is the general prohibition on Mishkav Zakar. It does not have this pasuk. So when the Brisa says that he's chayav twice, it has to be the Rabbanan and not Rabbi Yehuda. That's one version. The Ikar the Army, there are others who said Afilu Tein Rabbi Yehuda. You could even say that Brisa is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda would agree that when a person has relations with his father, he's over on two lavim and he needs two chatas offerings. Why? How would he bring it? He's going to say, I'm going to bring you a kavachomer that when someone has relations with his father, he's over on two isurim. So why? Because Uma Afi Avim the Korvei the Avim who Chayev Shayin Avim Lo Koshikin. So he says, what's the kavachomer? He says as follows. We have a pasuk that says you can't have Mishka Zakar with your father's brother. Right? What's his relationship to his father's brother? It's through his father, right? So if his uncle, if he's chayav for relations with his uncle, he surely should be chayav for relations with his father. So therefore, you have a kavachomer that from the uncle that the father also has a piyuv, and then you add on top of that the general prohibition on mishkav zacher, and you end up with two sources for piyuv misa, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, who does not understand Eretz Avicha to be talking about relations with his father. Okay, so we have one group who says that in fact this brisa that says you're over on two is not like Rabbi Yehuda because it can't use Eretz Avicha to talk about relations with his father, and the other brisa says no, even Rabbi Yehuda could agree that someone has relations with his father is over on two because they have a kavachomer. What are they arguing about? Because this is the Chutz of Rabbi Rabbi. They're arguing about their Machlokas of Rabbi Rabbi, which we're going to see later on in Sanhedrin. Mar Savar on Shimnadin. Mar Savar ain't on Shimnadin. So he says that one of them holds that you can punish someone using a logical argument like a kavachomer, and the other holds you can't. So if you understand that you can make a kavachomer to punish someone and make him chayav achatos, so then it's fine because Rabbi Yehuda can agree that he's over on two lavim for his father, one because of the general prohibition on Mishkav Zacher, and one from the kavachomer from his uncle. But if you understand that you cannot make a kavachomer to be mechayiv someone misa, so then you no longer have the kavachomer, and you don't have the pasuk erva savicha to tell you relations with the father, so all you're left with is the general prohibition on Mishkav Zacher, and then therefore the brisa that says that you're a chayav on two must be like Rabbanan and not like Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda would say erva savicha is used up for talking about wife of the father. Okay, Rabbanan Azhara leishes aviv minalahu. So where do the Rabbanan learn the Azhara from Eishes Aviv? Because remember what happened here is this pasuk, which is the Azhara pasuk, is the pasuk that teaches you about relations with your father's wife or the mother. He learned Eretz Avicha talking about Mishkav Zacher, right? So that's what the Rabbanan learned. So then therefore you know Eretz Imcha, you know mother who's not married to the father, but how do you know where is the Azhara for the wife of the father? So the Gemara says, Naftalu me Eretz Eishes Avicha Lo Tegala. We have this other pasuk down here, which says Eretz Eishes Avicha Lo Tegala, tells you that that's the Azhara, according to the Rabbanan, to tell you that a man cannot have relations with the wife of his father, even if it's not his mother. Okay, so we say Rabbi Yehuda. So why does Rabbi Yehuda have to learn it from Eretz Avicha? Why not? Why doesn't he learn it from a very explicit pasuk, which says Eretz Eishes Avicha Lo Tegala? So the Gemara says he learns that Ahu Miboyle Lazhara Leishes Aviv Lachar Misa. He needs that pasuk to tell you that a person is chayav, which we actually saw in our mission yesterday, that if a man has relations with the wife of his father, that applies even if his father dies. So if his father married a woman who's not his mother, and then his father dies, he has relations with that woman, he's been over on the Isser of Eishes Aviv. That's how Rabbi Yehuda would use this pasuk. Okay, so the Gemara says, Rabbanan, where would the Rabbanan know the halakha in our mission that a man is chayav for relations with his wife's father even after his father dies? So the Gemara says, so the end of the pasuk says, those words are extra, and so therefore that's what the Rabbanan used to learn that a man is chayav for relations with his wife's father even after his father is no longer living. Rabbi Yehuda, what about Rabbi Yehuda? What does he do with those words? So he says he's coming to teach you that these words, Eretz Avichahu, comes to tell you that when a person has relations with the wife of his father, who's married to his father still, that he's only chayav for relations with the wife of the father. He's not chayav for the general prohibition on Eshetis. That's what Rabbi Yehuda learned from the word Eretz Avichahu. Now, hopefully someone will ask the question, maybe, that yesterday's Mishnah we said expressly not like that. No, we learned in the Mishnah, Habal Eshes of, someone who comes has relations with the wife of his father, Chayav Alei Mishum Eshes of, Umishum Eshes Ish. That the person is chayav both for Eshes of and for Eshes Ish. Vein b'chayav, vein lachar mitzvah, of it, whether the father's living or not. And what happens? This is an uncontested statement in the Mishnah. Who apolog Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda never argued. So if Rabbi Yehuda learned from Eretz Avichahu that when a person has relations with the wife of his father, he's chayav only for wife of the father, but not for general prohibition on Eshes Ish. So then Rabbi Yehuda, who dashes that pasuk, should have argued on the Mishnah and said, hold on, you're only chayav for relations with the wife of the father. So the Gemara says, I'm Rabbi, Polish for Brayso. And Rabbi Yehuda does argue, and it just happens to be in the Mishnah he didn't say, but in a Brayso somewhere it must be that he says it. Okay, Rabbanan, okay, so we said that we talked about the fact that Rabbi Yehuda we talked about the fact that Rabbi Yehuda learned from Eretz Eshes Avicha Lo Segala that I'm sorry. So that was Azhara. So I'm sorry. So we have as follows, that we're talking now about the halacha that whether that if a man has relations with the wife of his father after he dies, so Rabbi Yehuda learned that from Eretz Eshes Avicha Lo Segala. The Rabbanan learned it from Eretz Avichahu. So now the question here is, that's the Azhara, that's the warning. But remember, we need a punishment also. So where do we learn the punishment? So now the Gemara says, Bishlam Rabbi Yehuda Maisi Lo B'Gzer Shava. So Rabbi Yehuda, this is not a problem, because Rabbi Yehuda would learn the Azhara from Eretz Eshes Avicha Lo Segala. How would he know the Onish? Because remember, we had a Gzer Shava that we compared Eretz Avicha Lo Segala to Eretz Aviv Gila to tell you that there's a Gzer Shava between Onish and Azhara, and if you know one, you know the other. So therefore, once Rabbi Yehuda knows Eretz Avicha Lo Segala comes to tell you that there's an Azhara, there's a warning not to have relations with the wife of his father, so then the Gzer Shava tells you that there's also an Onish. But according to the Rabbanan, who A, didn't make that Gzer Shava, and B, learning it from the words Eretz Avichahu, that's how they know Azhara. But how do they know Onish? So we say, El Rabbanan Minolahu, where do they know it from? Amri Lecha, Hahu Eretz Aviv Gila, the Maftik La Rabbi Yehuda with Gzer Shava, Mafkile Inhu Lo Onish Eshes Aviv Lachanisa. So he says as follows, that if you remember, that Rabbi Yehuda used these words Eretz Aviv Gila, which were extra, to connect a Gzer Shava between Eretz Aviv Gila and Eretz Avicha Lo Segala, right? But and that was to teach a number of things. It was to teach that, first of all, that this pasuk is not talking about Mishkan Zachar with his father, but rather it's talking about the wife of the father, and it was also talking about the Gzer Shava to show how you know the mother even without marriage. But that was only a Gzer Shava according to Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbanan didn't darshan that Gzer Shava. So as Rabbi Yehuda pointed out, these words are extra, and the Rabbanan did not use it for Gzer Shava. So we're saying, okay, these words, Eretz Aviv Gila, are extra, come to tell you the Onish, the punishment, because remember this pasuk is again a punishment pasuk. It says, most Yom Tushneim D'Meim Bam. So it's coming to tell you the Onish for someone who has relations with the wife of his father, even after his father died. So these words are extra. Okay? Rabbanan, Onish L'imo Sheina Eshes Aviv, Onish L'imo Sheina Eshes Aviv Minalu. Okay, so remember that we had, according to the Rabbanan, we had the Eretz Imcha Lo Segala was an Azhara that he shouldn't have relations with his mother, who's not the wife of his father. And we have an Azhara of Eretz Eshes Avicha Lo Segala that the wife of the Eretz Imcha Lo Segala, which the Rabbanan understands to be an Azhara for his mother who's not married to his father. And then you have Eretz Eshes Avicha Lo Segala to tell you that there's an Azhara on the wife of the father, right? So we have Azhara for both mother and wife of father. But Onish, remember, we only know the Isha Yashar Yishkav as Eshes Aviv, which tells you wife of the father. But how do we know an Onish for mother who is not married to the father. So I'm Rav Shisha Brei Rav Idai. Now remember, by the way, we referenced Rav Shisha Brei Rav Idai. I told you we were going to learn today. That's this. Amar Kra, the pasuk says Imcha Hi. The pasuk says it is his mother. Asa Kasav Imo She'enisha Eishes Ki Imo She Eishes So he says as follows: that we have Avras Imcha Lo Tegala, which is talking about his mother, and then the pasuk needlessly says Imcha Hi, it's his mother. So that comes to tell you it's his mother no matter what, whether his mother was married to his father or wasn't married to his father. So that's how they learned Onesh for the case of the mother who's not married to the father. That's how they're up on to learn it from Imcha. Okay, so now we're finished with our chart. A little complicated. Okay, Haba al Kalaso. So someone who has relations with his daughter-in-law. So the Gemara says, "V'lachayv nami misham eishes beno." So what is the pasuk that says by son-in-law? It says. The pasuk says, "Ervas kalascha lo segala." The erva of your daughter-in-law you should not uncover. Eishes bincha hi lo segala ervasa. It's the wife of your son. You should not uncover her erva. So what do you see? You see two things. The pasuk is telling you. It's repeating itself. But one says ervas kalascha lo segala, and then the other one says eishes bincha hi lo segala. Implies that there's two lavim that someone is over when they have relations with his daughter-in-law. So the Gemara says as follows: why did you tell me the Mishnah I have two lavim? One for his daughter-in-law and one for having relations with a married woman. It should be one for married woman, one for his daughter-in-law, and another for his daughter-in-law, because there's two things in the pasuk that imply there's two lavim to the daughter-in-law. Rabbi the kalaso the siyam beishes beno lomer lachaz duhi kalaso duhi beishes beno. He says no. You're figuring out that it's two psukim when it says ervas kalaso lo tegala beishes beno he lo tegala ervas. You're saying that's two psukim. It's not really two psukim. It's the same person. It's both talking about the daughter-in-law, and therefore there's only one lav of the daughter-in-law and one lav of beishes. This is what our mission told us. So you might ask, well, if so, why does the pasuk repeat it twice? So they say, Rashi points out that this is in order to be Machayim, even Akar Misa, it says twice his daughter-in-law, once for his daughter-in-law when his son is still alive, and once for his daughter-in-law even after the son dies. But it's at the end of the day, still only one love. Okay, and that's why our mission said he's over on two lives, one for daughter-in-law and one the general prohibition on Ashes. Okay, Mishnah, Habal Adakavial Behema, the Isha Mediata Behema, the Skilo. We said in the Mishnah before, we had 18 cases affirmatively enact homosexual acts, and Al Behema, someone who engages in bestiality, and a woman who engages in bestiality by bringing behema on her. All of those get the skila. Now the Gemara asks the question, the Mishnah, he says, now we know the halacha is, the Torah tells us that if someone has relations with a behema, not only does he get killed, but the animal gets killed. So the Mishnah inquires about this. This is an interesting halacha. He said, what did the animal do wrong? I get it. The man did a chet. What did the behema do? We're going to see what this means in the Gemara. But it says, since this animal brought a person to takala, to sin, therefore the pasuk says it should be stoned. We'll see in the Gemara what that means. Another possibility. We don't want it to be that people see Bessie the cow walking around and people say, oh, Bessie, that's the one who Reuben, whatever, had relations with. So, again, we'll see in the Gemara what these two answers are about, but that's the reason the animal gets killed. Okay, so the Gemara says, Zakar Minola, and how do I know that someone is Chayav Skila for Mishka Zakar? It's Hana Rabbanim, because the pasuk says, so the Bryce of Darshan is the pasuk, Ish, so it says Prat of Katan, that's saying, it's talking about a man but not a Katan, Asher Yishkav as Zakar, who has relations with a Zakar, Ben Gadol Ben Katan, so it's saying that if someone has relations with a katan, so someone sodomizes a 10-year-old, that he's chayav, even though the recipient of his act was a katan. Conversely, if the katan was 10 years old and had relations, had mishkav zachar with a 30-year-old, so then the 30-year-old is chayav, even though the person who was performing the act was a katan. So we see that applies at some level. We'll get into a little more clarification on detail, hopefully, if we get to the end of the dot. Okay, mishkavei isha. The pasuk continues. Mishkavei isha, who has, which implies plural forms of relationships similar to a woman. So we say as follows: Magalatar Kasar, which is named Mishkavat Isha. That it's not coming to teach us anything about Mishkav Zachar. It's coming to teach us about relations with a woman. As follows, because since it says Mishkavei Isha plural, comes to tell you that if a man has relations, let's say with his sister, anyone he's not permitted to, it's coming to tell you that not only is that true if he has ordinary relations with his sister, but even if he has even if he has anal intercourse with his sister, that would also be a violation of the Erba, and he would be chayav misa. He said, interestingly, this you would think was coming to tell you a halacha of mishkav zachar, but actually it's coming to teach you from mishkav zachar that it says mishkavei isha, and it equates the two forms of intercourse with a woman with a man. With a woman, comes to tell you that therefore any case that relations with a woman is impermissible. That's true whether it's in the natural or unnatural way. Okay. Most yumsu, the pasuk continues, they should surely die with skila, with stoning. The Gemara says, how do you know? How do you know it's skila when it says they should die? Maybe it means strafe or heritage or kennek. The Gemara says, never comes to man above, and never above the yadon to man above. So we've had this before, that since here by Mishkav Zachar and by all the yadon, he says the man above, malahel the skila afkam skila, just like in the case of Oviadoni, it's clear that it's skila. So to here in Mishkav Zachar, it's clear that it is skila. Okay, so the Gemara says fine. So now I have a pasuk that teaches us that people who engage in mishkav zachar get killed. So that's the onish. Onish shamanu as harminayin. How do I know that you're not supposed to have, that you have to be warned in the Torah to tell you that you're not allowed to have mishkav zachar? Tamulamar that zachar latishkav mishkavei isha toevahu. So we say, the pasuk says you should not have. It's another pasuk that says you shouldn't have homosexual relations. It's toeva. Lamadnu azhara. Lamadnu azhara l'sholchev. Azhara l'nishkav minayin. So he says as follows. So what are we proving so far? We had an oneg, which talks about both of them, right? So both the person, it says that two people should not have it. The and bum, both of them are chayav misa. So the oneg we know is true both for the performer, the actor, and the recipient of the Zachar. But in the case of Azhara, we learned from the pasuk that says that as Zachar like Tishkav Mishkavei Isha, you should not engage in homosexual relations with a man. That's talking about an actor. But how do we know that the recipient has an Azhara? Okay, Azhara Nishkav Minayin Tamalumar Lo Yia Kadesh Mibnei Yisrael. The pasuk says in Devarim that there should not be a Kadesh Mibnei Yisrael. Omer, and we have a pasuk in Malachim Aleph which says the Gam Kadesh Ki Ba'aretz. The Gam Kadesh Ki Ba'aretz. There was Kadesh in the land. Also, Kechola Toivas Hagayim Asher Horish. That you did like all of the Toivas of the Goyim that the Rebbeinu Shalom kicked out of Eretz Yisrael. So what do you see? So you see that it says the word Kadesh in Malachim Aleph by dealing with Toivas. Right? And we know that one of the toevos that's dealt with in the Torah is Mishkav Zachar. And so once we know that when it talks about Kadesh being done in Eretz Yisrael, it includes Mishkav Zachar, then when the pasuk in the Devarim says, well, yeah, Kadesh Mibnei Yisrael, that there shouldn't be a Kadesh, it's coming to tell you that there should not be Mishkav Zachar. So you see that it is a Azhara. How do you know that it's for the recipient? Because since we see by the Onei that it's true whether the person gets punished, whether they're the actor or the recipient. So too here in the Torah, it applies when it says Kadesh, well, yeah, Kadesh, it's saying even the recipient. Okay, these are very small. Rabbi Kiva says, Eino Tzara. I don't need to come onto this whole Lo Yeh Kadesh business. Why? Because Hareyu Omer, it's written in the pasuk. We brought the Azhara, which we understood to be talking about only the actor, because it says we have Zachar Leishishka Mishkavei Isha. He says we have Zachar Leishishka Mishkavei Isha. He says that pasuk that says you should not engage in acts of mishkav zachar can be read lo sishkav, you should not be the actor, or lo sishkav, you should not have the act done upon you. So the same pasuk can teach us both cases, actor and recipient, for purposes of an azhar. Behema minallah, and how do I know that a person gets skila for relations with a behema? Because the Rabbanan learned each. It says a man pras katan to tell you that if a katan has relations with a behema, he's not chayiv misa. The pasuk continues that shegiten shechutza behema, that he. So he says that he puts that he engages in relations with the behema, ben gedola, ben katana, whether the animal is old, young, it doesn't matter. We're going to get into this because by people there's a distinction, but by animals there's no distinction. The animal could be 1 hour old and you're chayav for doing it. It could be 50 years old and you're chayav for doing it. Okay? Most you must, the pasuk continues, you should surely be killed. We say it's beskilo. Same question we've had a bunch of times. So it says, how do you know skila? Maybe it's like by where it says Nemar Khan, it's written here Kaharogu. The Nemar, so it's written in our pasuk Kaharogu. The Nemar Lahalan Kiharak Kahargenu, that we have a pasuk later that's written in Dvarim Yud Gimel, which I think was talking about I don't remember, maybe talking by Nidachas, I don't remember, but it says Harak Kahargenu, they should surely be killed. No, it's not Nidachas, I don't remember, but the pasuk is talking about Skila. Malaham the Skila, Akam the Kila, we learn from that there Shava. And even though that even though that Karogu, it says here, is technically speaking about the behema, we assume that the man and the behema get the same punishment. So you see that a person gets the punishment of kilo who engages in relations with a behema. Lamanu ones l'shochev, ones l'nishkav minala. So he says, okay, this pasuk that told us that the person dies is talking about ish after you can shechita of the behema, that puts his shiva in the behema implies that he's the actor and that he gets killed. How do I know that a person who allows himself to be sodomized, a man who allows himself to be sodomized by an animal gets death? Tamalomer kol shochev and behema mos yumos. So now the pasuk says any person who lies over the behema gets killed. Now technically this pasuk seems to imply someone who's an actor. We're looking for something of someone who's a recipient. But why is it relevant? Because since we've already established that the actor gets killed, so what do you need this pasuk kol shochev and behema mos yumos? We already learned it from Isha, so you can shechit over the behema. So the Gemara says, therefore it's an extra pasuk telling us that he gets killed. So that if we have this concept that if you don't need it for a person who's the actor, then we'll use it instead for the person who's the recipient. Lamanu onesh bein l'shocha bein l'nishka. He says, okay, fine, I accept that drasha. So we've learned the onesh, that there's a punishment whether the person is the one performing the mishkav zachar or the one who's the recipient of the mishkav zachar. Azhara minayin. How do I know azhara? Amalomer v'chol behema l'titei shechafta v'chol tamaba. Okay, so it says that in any animal you shouldn't put the shigla tamabad lamanu azhara l'shochev. I'm sorry. So he says that is the azhara. It says that you should not have relations with the behema l'tamabah. So that's the azhara for so l'mana azhara l'shochev. So we see the warning that a person should not be the actor. L'nishkav minayin. How do I know that he shouldn't be the recipient? So we've now established onus for both actor and recipient, and we've established azhara warning for the actor. How do I know for the recipient? Hamaloma lo yeh kadesh m'bnei Yisrael. V'omer v'gam kadesh hayabaret. The same drug that we had before, that when it says lo yeh kadesh, it's reference to things that are toeva. Before we used it for mishkav zachar, now we're using it for mishkav behema because that's also considered a toeva. And once it's a toeva, it's covered under the gam kadesh hibaret, which then translates back to lo yeh kadesh is a form of azhara. The different Rabbi Yishmael, these are very small. Rabbi Akiva, much like he did before, Rabbi Akiva says "Ein atzara." Hareyu Amar lo shkiten shechaftecha, which we said was the actor. He says that the fact that the Torah picked a funny way to say it, you could also read it or understand it lo shkiten shchiva seich, to tell you that you should not be a recipient either. Okay, so now we have both the azhara for the actor and the recipient, and we have the onus for the actor and recipient for behemoth. So now we're going to say as follows: Habal zacher behavior love zacher. Someone somehow both performed mishkav zacher and received mishkav zacher by accident somehow, or without realizing it was wrong. So according to Rabbi Shmuel, he's over on two things. That he needs to bring two chatos. Why? Because one is the pasuk that says that lo tishkav, which tells you that it is that he should not have relations where he's the actor. Because lo yeh kadesh was where we learned that he should not be the recipient, right? So according to Rabbi Shmuel, it works well. He has to bring two carbon chatos because we had one pasuk that tells us he shouldn't be the actor, one pasuk that he shouldn't be the recipient. Because lo tishkav lo shishachev kadahi. Because according to Rabbi Akiva, the isser of being an actor and a recipient both come from the pasuk. It's just read two different ways, lo tishkav or lo tishachev. But that's still at the end of the day only one lav. So therefore, this is a nafkamina between how Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva learned in Lamaisa, which would be is that if in the same period of unawareness that it was usher, he both performed and had performed on him an act of homosexuality. According to Rabbi Shmuel, there are two separate lavs implicated here, and therefore he brings two chatos. And according to Rabbi Akiva, even though he holds both are usher, he brings them from the same lav. Okay, similarly, someone somehow without realizing that it was usher, both had engaged in relations with the behemoth and had a behemoth engaged in relations with him. Amr Bavo. Rabbi Shmuel chayav shtayim. So he says, Rabbi Avo says, according to Rabbi Shmuel, he's chayav two. Why? One, because it says lo sitein shechavtecha. So one that said he shouldn't be the actor, and one that said with a behemoth, and one that said that he shouldn't be a toeva, that he's the recipient. But according to Rabbi Akiva, he would only be chayav one because why? Rabbi Akiva learned both actor and recipient by mishkav zacher, by mishkav behema from the same pasuk lo sitein shechavtecha, and then we darshan the b'shchiva seich, but they're both coming from one pasuk, so therefore there's only one lav. That's one lav. Okay. Abaya Amar. Abaya argues on Rabbi Avo. Abaya says no. According to Rabbi Shmuel, he's also only chayav one. Why? Because why did he think he was chayav two? Because one, lo sitein shechavtecha. Number two, because lo yeh kadesh. But he says, Abaya argues. He says the chitiv lo yeh kadesh pegavri tiv. He says that pasuk lo yeh kadesh is when it talks about a toeva, it's speaking specifically about a toeva of mishkav zacher. So therefore, he doesn't have a problem with saying that Rabbi Shmuel holds there two in the case of Mishkav Zacher. For Mishkav Behema, he has a problem because he says Lo Stia Kadesh is not talking about Mishkav Behema, it's only talking about Mishkav Zacher.
Yeah, let's get some new people. I appreciate it, bro. Bring some people, I don't really know anyone who wants to. James, if you need a real true girl, I was down here. I'll watch some. No problem. It's not a big deal. No, which one? I just got 8% of kickers earlier on the pump. 27. Chad. Jimmy. Hey, what's up, Mark? What's up, Mark? What's up, everyone else? Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I'm actually on here in 2 accounts. It's kind of started a community just like today, and I'm not really sure, but it kind of falls like right in line with what you guys are saying. And like, you guys are like the big dogs, like you guys are OGs, and like I want to catch that alpha. I want to come up on stage, show some more respect, so to speak. Get your name up because that's how you grow, right? I've been here, for 20, 25 years. Yeah, I mean, like if I got your ear, I would just say like what was the fire that what was the spark that started the fire here with this? Because I went to bed this afternoon because I was feeling sick and I was just grinding. But
Of Zachar. So we say, okay, so then according to Rabbi, if you're saying that Lo Yeh Kadesh can't be talking about Mishka Behema, we just use that pasuk to be our source for an Azhara on a recipient of Mishka Behema. So Elul Rabbi Shmuel Azhara Nishka Minole. How would he know it? Because we just knocked out using Lo Yeh Kadesh from telling us an Azhara for the recipient of an bestiality. So Gemara says, Naftale, he learned it out, Mikol Shochet in Behema Mot Yumas, that it says that if someone lies with the behemoth, he should surely die. Now that's an extra pasuk. We have this already, right? So we have before. This is how we learned the onesh. I'm sorry. This is how we learned the. This is how we learned the azhara on someone who is the recipient. Because we said the pasuk, we have an extra pasuk written by onesh. Since we don't need it by onesh, we'll use it for azhara. But the Gemara wants to know, at the end of the day, if you're trying to teach azhara, why would the Torah put it in the language? I'm sorry, if you're trying to teach the recipient, why would the Torah put it in the language of the actor? The Gemara says, and it chose to do that to tell you, so he says, how do I know that a person has an azhara, a warning not to be a recipient? Is because since the way I knew azhara of an actor was because the pasuk had an extra pasuk written by actor, and I'm sorry, the way I knew azhara by recipient is because it was an extra pasuk written by actor. If it doesn't apply to actor, let it apply to recipient. So now, how do I know azhara of the recipient? I'm sorry, that's why I knew the azhara of the actor. How do I know azhara of the recipient? Is because why did the Torah at the end of the day, if it wanted to tell you the azhara of the actor as opposed to the onish, as opposed to the onish of the actor, so you should have said it by azhara. Why are you telling it to me by onish? It's coming to tell you that there's a comparison between a shochev and a nishkav, and therefore he's warned even by a recipient. I'm sorry, I didn't say that very well, but at the end I think that is the correct thing. Okay, so the Gemara says, okay, so now we're going to talk about someone who had a little bit of a bad day. So if someone got sodomized by both a man and a behemoth, I'm sorry, this is someone who did. Okay, so he says he's chayav for two. One because it's called Lotishka Mishka Behema, and the other because it says Lotiteng Shechab Tzavabo. Rabbi Shmuel, but according to Rabbi Shmuel, Eino chayav ala achad. Because why? Because how did he learn the recipient? According to Rabbi Shmuel, the recipient at the end of the day is Idi Lo Yeh Kadeshu. That either that the way we learned out is that according to Rabbi Shmuel, that someone who is the recipient of Mishkav Zachar is from Leah Kadesh, and according to Rabbi Shmuel in the view of Rabbi Albohu, that the source of someone who is the recipient of a behemoth is also Leah Kadesh. So therefore, we'd only be chayav one. Abaye says, "I feel that Rabbi Shmuel nami chayav shayim." Abaye says, now if you remember, before Abaye argued and said a recipient who's the recipient of Mishkav behemoth cannot be learned from Lo Yeh Kadesh, because Lo Yeh Kadesh cannot be referring to an animal, it only refers to a man. So he therefore learned it out from so therefore, Abaya is consistent when he says, you're also chayav too, because they don't so that limud that Abaya just learned. So Abaya is saying, according to me, Rabbi Shmuel learned from two different psukim the recipient of Mishkav Zachar and Mishkav Behema, and so therefore he is chayav for two chai bekato. Now here's someone who really had an interesting day. Habal Zachar, the Heidi Zachar love. He was the actor in Mishkav Zachar and the recipient of Mishkav Zachar, and Habal Behema Behema love, and he was also the actor in bestiality and the recipient of bestiality. So he had all four going on. So Bein Rebavo, Bein Abaya, that whether you say like Rabbi Avo or you say like Abaya or Rabbi Shmuel chayav shalosh, Rabbi Akiva chayav shtayim. Why? All right, so it's as follows. So remember, so he did all four things. He was the actor for Mishkav Zachar and Mishkav Behema. He was the recipient for Mishkav Zachar and Mishkav Behema. So according to Rabbi, so how do we know actor? One is as Zachar Lo Tishka, that's one lav. So and that's the actor by Zachar. How do we know the actor by Behema? That's two lavim. Then when he's the recipient, according to Rabbi Shmuel, he knows Zachar from Lo Yeh Kadesh. So that is 3. Right? And then Rabbi Abo, according to Rabbi Abo, he learns out the recipient of the Hema also from Liyah Kadesh. But therefore, you don't get a fourth because you can't use Liyah Kadesh a second time. So therefore, according to Rabbi Abo, it's 3. Now, according to Abaye, you also have only 3 because you have Ezacher Lotishka tells you Ezacher is the actor. Behema Latite Shekhatava tells you actor by Behema. Liyah Kadesh tells you a recipient by Zacher. But where did Abaye learn the recipient by Behema? He learned it from Behema, which is the same source for where he learned an actor by Behema, so he also only had 3. But according to Rabbi Akiva, he's only chayav for 2, because why? Rabbi Akiva held in both the case of Zachar and Behema, you learn from the pasuk just how you read it, Lo Tishkav, Lo Tishachev, and similarly by Behema, it's a B'chol Behema, Lo Titin Shechatzecha, or Shchiva Seif, but at the end of the day, for all four issues, he only has 2 lavin, so Rabbi Akiva says, you have 2. All right, we'll have to stop here. Thank you.
Is it true that, like, you beat your wife? And it's like, what? Like, no, fucking, did she say that? Like, it does get you riled up. And to go back to your actual question about Brian, because of the financial situation, like, he does seem to make a lot of money from TV. I don't know how much longer the show's going to last or whatever, but I know Brendan probably has expressed interest, and he's like, things will be tense between them. And Brendan kind of has his card of like, well, no, I want to do this shit. It's like, well, you lose money too, right? If you're watching this, work is a bad idea.
All right, so let's say good morning, and let's begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning trip today. Our Torah sponsor for Kaf Shin Hey Hey, our annual Torah sponsor, Kosin Shachar, our self for dedicating all the Shin and Drachos this year. As he's hooked, the Torah starts for all about his small. That's the only sponsors for today. Park and Karen Gold. Formerly of Baltimore, now of Lakewood, New Jersey, in memory of our father Bruce Gold, is according to Rabbi in America, around Torah. The show will have an aliyah, the family in the Chamush, who's your famous Hashem to see the release of more of our hostages this Shabbos and next Hashem in the coming days, and our holy soldiers to be successful. The whole Maaseh Day. Let's go back a little to the days. Back is run days 52. We are picking up on even Aleph on the days 51b. 51b. Did you get up to Rabbi Akiva Omer? Okay, good. So the Gemara says, I was on that, so again, let's pick up 2, 4, 6, 8, and up. 8 lines up from before it gets wide. Remember, again, still steeped in the conversation regarding Sreifa, and we'll get straight on. The interesting idea that the Gemara now is espousing is Ella, Zomel, B'Slam, Yisach, and Bora. Shnema, Basisa, Lo, Kash, Zomel, Lasos, La'ofi, but Lo, La'ach, also, Nidre, Rabbi Shmuel, right? So I ended up really like in the middle of Rabbi Shmuel's position. Saloch reminds again, the Gemara says like it's Rabbi Shmuel understand, and this is the conventionally understood approach as well. The Halach reminds that the unique din of Sreifa for a Bas Kohen is only a din at home. It doesn't apply to her accomplice in the crime, right, to the man with whom she committed adultery, nor does it apply to the Eidim Zolomim. Now again, remember, everyone is going to get a death penalty, right? So in other words, the man with whom she committed adultery is also going to get a death penalty. The witnesses will also get a reciprocal death penalty, but they do not get full Sreifa. Her unique Sreifa is for her and her alone. In general, but you can remember, he says, Achas, so the Achas Nesua, Yotzos the Sreifa. So Yeshua says, whether the Bas Kohen is her son, or whether she is a Nesua, either way, the punishment is going to be Sreifa. You would have thought that this applies even to a single woman. In other words, maybe a Bas Kohen is held to such a high standard that Halacha L'maaseh, even if she commits an act of immorality as a single woman, maybe she's going to be subject to Sreifa. So we saw this already yesterday. So it says over here, it says in the previous context, it says over here, Aviyah by the case of Bas Kohen. It says Aviyah in the context of incest. So the Gemara says, it says in both Pesukim Aviyah, Mal Halon Nusim Zekas Bal, Afkan is Nusim Zekas Bal. Just like earlier talking about, again, act of immorality, where there is an element of marriage, so too again, Halacha Laisa over here is talking about where there's a snus with an element of marriage. I'm going to be Shmuel. So first one line above the bottom of Nun Aleph number 51b. Rabbi Shmuel says if that's the case, maybe we say just like in one part the context is that she's a Nara and she's an Arusa. So too over here, the second part should also be only applying if she's a Nara and she's an Arusa. Rabbi Akiva Yishmalachi Bas Ubas Anidoresh. It's interesting enough, so the Akiva said that's Rabbi Shmuel. The pasuk could have just said Bas, but it says Ubas, the Vav. Now Vav equals to Ribuy, and Vav comes to include. So what is from this? Although the pasuk is talking about a Nara who is an Arusa, the extra Vav comes to teaching that it includes all cases of a married Bas Kohen. So the Gemara says, the Hebrew Nation Akadorish, this isn't so Rabbi Shmuel says that's Rabbi Akiva. And he said like this. He said, interestingly enough, the Hinipnei, second one about Hinipnei Akadorish Bas Ubas. Notice in the same part, so Shkoya, Hidarshin, Ubas, Hidarshin, Abad. So first of all, this says that's the correct structure. So because Hidarshin, an extra Abad, therefore we're going to put this call out for straight up. And you know what, I just want to be clear. Remember, no one is disagreeing on the fact that there's a death penalty for adultery. Remember, what's the disagreement over here? What's the death penalty? So the Gemara says, Mashma lahadis hanasua, hedis hapnuya. Mashma lahotzi as hapnuya, hotzi as hanasua. So the Gemara says like this: if we're going to mention it to include in the sua, then by definition you also include a pnuya. Like maybe it includes all types of bas kohen, even if she's unmarried. So Mashma lahotzi as hapnuya, and if you're going to exclude a single girl, hotzi as hanasua. But that you should exclude ultimately in the surah as well. Rabbi Akiva says as follows: Ahani Gzir Shabbat Lemeite Pino, Bahani Bas Ubas Lelabos Hashanah. Rabbi Akiva will say like this: the Gzir Shabbat will help to exclude a Pino. So a single girl, a single Bas Kohen, is not subject to any of these halachos, and ultimately again the Vav or Bas Ubas, the extremely one Lelabos as Hanashua comes to include the Yeshua. Rabbi Shmuel will say, if you come with Bas Ubas, Shmaniya Hagaway Gzir Shabbat. And Shmuel says, from the fact that we're saying Bas Ubas, it makes it sound like he's no longer holding the Gzir Shabbat. Shmuel, hi Bas Ubas, my birthday. So again, remember, Rabbi Akiva uses the Ubas, the Vav to include all different cases of a Bas Kohen who's married. Rabbi Shmuel rejects that. But Rabbi Shmuel also has to admit the fact that Torah that says Bas Kohen, why did it say Ubas? What does he do with the extra Vav? So the Gemara says, you violated Hidutani Abuli Yishmuel Bar Aved. Very interesting. Yefishem Matzinu Shechalak HaKasa B'Scharim B'Knim L'Barim Yochel Nachlok with no Satan. So I'm not thought like this. It's very interesting. I'm not thought the same way. The Torah makes a distinction about Kohanim, by male Kohanim, between what's called blemished and unblemished Kohanim. I see that the distinction that Allah makes the Kohen is about Mum is not able to do the Avodah. So the distinction between blemished and unblemished Kohanim. I might have thought that same distinction applies to a Bas Kohen. Interesting, right? And maybe the din of Bas Kohen, specifically the din of streifa by a Bas Kohen, only applies to an unblemished Bas Kohen, to which the Gemara says, Talmud Bas, Kibas, get the extra Vav, there's a revoid, and to tell us that whenever there's a din that applies to a Bas Kohen, it doesn't make a difference. There's no din of union by a Bas Kohen, only a din of union by Kohanim. Interesting, Rabbi Akiva, but where is Rabbi Akiva learning this out from? Rabbi Akiva, Nebehem Makrivin Abahi Kodesh. Rabbi Akiva says, you know, if you're Pasika, Nebehem Makrivin, they will offer up the Kabbalah Abahi Kodesh, and they will be sanctified. Teaching us what? That the sanctity of a male Kohen is fundamentally tethered to his what called unblemished state. But that's only because that by male Kohanim is an element of Hakrava, of Kabbalah. But by a Bas Kohen, because there is no element of Hakrava, of Kabbalah, therefore again, her status is independent of whether or not she has a womb. Incredible? Very sure, the show would say, So again, Rabbi Shmuel says it's from that I might have thought that maybe the only people who have calling status are calling themselves. Maybe there's others don't have at all. So it's much Malando. Okay. Good. Rabbi Shmuel said, what's the top of Monday? 52a. Rabbi Shmuel, I as Avi Adina Kalalas, my Darshide. So what does Rabbi Kalalas? So what does Rabbi Shmuel do with the phrase? As Avi Adina Kalalas, what does he do with it? So the Gemara says, what he do with it? So if you need it for the following, what did he learn? The Gemara says, Hayavner Omer. What does it mean when the pasuk says that she contains a father? What does that mean? This is incredible. The pasuk is actually telling us how to relate to the father of the Bas Kohen. So remember, I just made this out. Right? So there's Rachel is whatever. Arusa, the Surat, Ruben, doesn't matter. She Rachel is the daughter of Aaron. Aaron is a Kohen. Rachel now commits adultery. So the pasuk says, through Rachel's adultery, she profanes her father. What does it mean practically that she profanes her father? So the Gemara says, it means that her father's status changes as a result of her behavior. So, for example, the Gemara says, that again, they would normally treat him in a more, we'll call it, in a more exalted way, right? In a holy way. They would treat him in a more mundane way. Covered, if they're no longer getting covered, they would treat him in a disparaging way. The idea is that because of the daughter's behavior, the father, again, to be clear, he's still a Kohen, right? He's still a Kohen, and he can still do the avodah, but he's stripped of covet. You don't give him covet anymore. So the Gemara says, why is that? So the Gemara says, we said, right? Cursed is the person who birthed such a child. Cursed is the person who raised such a child. Cursed is the person who literally, again, such a person, I guess the word translation, issued forth from their loins. So it says, this is in accordance to Hebrew, we say, when a person is a Rasha, the person that's terrible things, we call them a Rasha, the son of a Rasha, even though their parents may really be a tzaddik, even though they really may be a Rasha and tzaddik. So who is that? Kiman? So it's like, this is a fascinating discussion. This definitely goes into the notebook of Dafyomi topics that we need to find the time to really delve into a little bit. Because what the Gemara is saying over here is that there is parental culpability for the actions and decisions of a child. Right? Or again, Rachel, the daughter, commits adultery. You say, clearly there is something fundamentally flawed in the chinuch you gave your child. There's something fundamentally flawed in the home in which you raised your child. Because for a child to make these type of lifestyle decisions means that obviously, again, he did something wrong. And the Gemara says over here, this has an impact on the father. So now, father, we will no longer give you the honor you deserve because this is the child you raised. Cursed is the person who raised with the child. Cursed is the person. So I just want to point out, you'll find it's fascinating. And I just want to point out that in Chazal themselves, there is such a fundamental machlokes about the liability or responsibility of parents for how their children turn out. And we see very different competing motifs in Chazal. And again, we know this as parents. There are times where parents can do every single thing right. But yet, my kid makes their own decisions. Right? Children become adults, and adults make their own decisions. And a parent might have done every single thing at every single junction they were supposed to do. My kid is still going to make their own decision. But, on the other hand, it is also quite possible that the decisions that children make are absolutely steeped in the upbringing and the chinuch and the values or lack of values that they gave them. And that's a difficult pill to swallow because, the Gemara says, something that is bent, cannot be made straight. So what else says? So the Gemara says, what does that mean? Right? We live in a world that we hope in general, our Yiddishkeit, that whatever I do wrong, I can always fix. So one of these things that's bent cannot be made straight. So the Gemara says, Zeh sheholiv mamzer. Zeh sheholiv mamzer. Right? So if you I was going to say the Gemara literally. I always say the Gemara literally, which is what it means Zeh sheholiv mamzer. So a person has an illicit relationship, the result of that illicit union is a mamzer. No matter how bad you feel for what you did, right? No matter how much tshuva you do, you can't what? You can't what? You can't undo it. The mamzer is there. So I'll tell you, like, as I get older and like look back on raising a family, I feel like sometimes it's not just not a mamzer. What it also is a din in chinuch. Sometimes the other thing you can't undo is the way you raise your children and the influences you allow into your home, the things you allow your children to do, don't allow your children to do. That you can't undo chinuch. And it's one of the hardest parts because often we learn to be a parent on the job, and I only realize my mistakes afterwards. So it's easy to say this, like after I've created the mamzer. Like in other words, like again, I'm not calling out because but you understand that I mean like after I make the mistakes, and now I realize I really made some significant mistakes. And the incredible part is you can't undo it. You can't. Chinuch is one of those things where a lot of times, and again, I could go back and have open and honest conversations with my kids and say, I just want to tell you, those things that I did, they weren't right. They weren't right. And I want to be clear that they weren't right. But no matter how much I'm owed to my kids that they weren't right, I've created the mamzer. I've created the flawed chinuch. I've created the flawed paradigms in the home, and I can't walk it back. So there's this so again, on one hand, there's this idea that a parent can do everything right and a child still makes their own decisions. So who says that Rachel's actions reflect on her father, Aaron HaKohen? But again, there's also an approach in Chazal that says no. What a child does and how a child behaves and how a child lives his life is a direct reflection of the chinuch that he or she has received in the home growing up. Which is right? They're both right. There are elements of both of this, which is why, again, the chinuch we give our children, the example we set for our children, the behaviors we model for our children, the homes we create for our children, the lifestyles we create for our children, everything goes into the chinuch. And again, if it's good, great. But if it's flawed, you want to tell us, we, the parent, is held responsible. Incredible. Let's go ahead. There's human sasan scholar. So what's in my kind of dictator human sasan scholar? Why does the Mishnah end off? It was interesting, right? Because the Mishnah ended off by saying this is the mitzvah of skila. So why does the Mishnah end off this way? Mishnah Gitana, Mikmar Hadin, Motzin Osel Nisaklo. Because remember again, what did we say before? So for the if Allah is liable to skila, we take him out to skila. Base that skila hayat is this is the previous Mishnah, not the last Mishnah. We did 2 Mishnahs ago. Base that skila hayat gavash nekomos. But I read the kabbalah the list of mitzvah sanis srafim. Tananam is mitzvah sanis scholar. Because also here's what's interesting. Even though really this Mishnah spoke about Arba Misos, but it was really following on the heels of the Skila Mishnah, right? So therefore we had Skila, then I went into Arba Misos, and then I wanted to close out the discussion of Skila. And that's why the Mishnah ends off by saying, Zu mitzvahs haniskalin. That's the end of the Skila discussion, and we'll say now we begin the Sreifa. Here we go, Mishnah. Mitzvahs hanisracha. We'll say this is pretty wild stuff. So what is Sreifa? What is Sreifa? Now, I just want to point out, before we go on, Halacha l'maisa, right? What do we do with the Bas Kohen? So the Rambam Pasch is a Nochos Isuri Dia Parakima Halacha Gimel. Bas Kohen Shezinsa, Hishi Eishes Ish. Beisha Haya Baila Kohen, Beisha Haya Yisrael, Dafido Haya Baila Mamzer O Nasir O Sham Lechadi Lavin, Harizu B'Sreifa. So say the Halacha is the Bas Kohen, whether she's in Arusa or she's in a Suah. Whether she's married to a Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, Mamzer, Nisim, Plishti, Givoni, whatever it is, right? So, actually, that's not true. Has to be Jewish, right? So the mice, again, her judgment for adultery is Sreifa. However, Upo'ala, the Chanek, right? But yeah, but the halacha is the man with whom she commits adultery, and by extension also doesn't say it over here, but ultimately again, but Ethan Zoman as well will get chenek. Chenek strangulation is the normal punishment for adultery. So the only person who gets this unique punishment for adultery is the Bas Kohen herself, whatever, but everyone else, about Chenek. Good, that's the Rambam. Mishnah. Mishnah is Rabbi. We say, how do we administer the punishment of Sreifa? So we go ahead and we immerse him in manure up until his thighs. We immerse him in manure. Now, what's that? So Rashi says over here in the Shakin also, we're going to see is we need to keep him immobilized. So once we keep him immobilized, that he can't move around, is we put him in manure up until his legs, up until his thighs. That way he keeps him immobile. And we take a soft rope. We take a soft rope. I should say, excuse me. We take a rough rope and we put it inside of a soft rope. So essentially, take a rough rope, and then again on the inside of that rope is a soft rope. So the soft rope is going to go around the neck of the guilty party. It's the korik out savaro, and we wrap it around his neck. So let's say let's say Katzon Ruben is Chayei Streifa. Step 1, put him in the manure up to his knees, immobilize him. Step 2, take a 2-ply rope. The outside rope is a coarse rope. The inside rope is a soft rope. We're tying that around his neck. 2 people stand on either side of Ruben, each one holding an end of the rope. And what happens? Each one pulls the rope towards him, and until what results? Until Ruben is forced to open his mouth. Right? So the act of pulling the rope will force him to open his mouth. So see what this expression means, but quite literally it means we ignite the wick. His circle is so clear, and we throw it down his throat. So Sreifa, interestingly enough, is, you think of like a burning at the stake of a person. It's actually not what it is. We're going to see it's a pouring of molten lead down the throat of the person. That's Sreifa. So he's immobilized, forces his mouth open, and we pour the molten lead. It calls it a seal. We'll see a wick. We'll see why he calls it that. The Zerchel Sofish, the Olegis was self-made, it goes then down into his kishkas. The Chomeres has been in there, but essentially he is killed from the inside. Like his insides are incinerated, but he's incinerated internally. The Liber Eva says, after he meets the Azango Hari Mekanim Bo Mitzasripa, that means here's the problem. The problem is, there's no problem. But the problem here, he says, is you're trying to manipulate the Sreifa, but you may end up what? You may end up strangling the guy. Right? Which by the way, is a different stuff, right? It's chenek. So the problem is if somebody is Chayei Streifa and you end up giving him chenek, isn't that problematic? So what should you do? So the Gemara says, first of all, he takes tongues and we pry his mouth open. What do we do? We use tongues. Now obviously, somehow they must be immobilizing him also, right? Because if you're not immobilizing him, he's going to run, he's going to move, and the whole thing. Remember again, the issue is the molten leg needs to go down his throat. If it doesn't go down his throat, it's going to burn him on the outside, and that's not Sreifa. Sreifa is internal incineration. But yeah, the Buddha says we can't do the rope thing because you risk strangulation, so it's that forces not open with time. So I'm not the Lord ever said, myself as calling Achos, Shazimsa, Ricky Plus, I did it to me, eventually. Rabbi says as follows. One time, there was a Bas Kohen who committed adultery, and therefore against Sreifa. And what did they do? They surrounded her with branches, this Sarkuha, and they burnt her. So the Lord themselves is simply indicating that the din of Sreifa, ultimately again is actually burning someone. To which the Gemara says, that was a mistake. Now remember again, it's a mistake in the manner of execution. It may not be a mistake in the execution itself. But the point is, what I'm saying is that was a misunderstanding of what Sreifa was. Says the Gemara, so first of all, what does it mean when it's a wick? So it's I'm not calls it a wick of leg. It actually points out over here. What they would do. Yeah, so sorry, Mr. points out what they would do is they would put like a long piece of lead, and they would mold it and they would melt it down. So they call it a psila because it was long, it resembled the wood. Okay, so you know about so first of all, where do you know this stuff? This is a little bit mind blowing because again, how do you know that srifa means internal incineration? Where does that come from? So okay, this is quite an interesting Gemara. Answer srifa me adas korach. We can hear srifa from korach means the same. Remember again, korach is the guardian against Moshe Rabbeinu, and again his assembly. Some of them were swallowed up by the earth, and some of them were incinerated. Look at Rashi says srifa from ksihacha remember again, part of what happened with Korach was that a bunch of people brought Ketoras. The people who brought Ketoras, remember everybody's jockeying to the position of Kohen Gadol, so whoever brought the Ketoras was incinerated. It was killed by Sreifa. So again, a large number of followers were swallowed up by the earth. Others who brought Ketoras were incinerated. So when it says Sreifa over here, it says Sreifa by Korach. So the Gemara says, just like by Korach, so again they were killed by internal incineration. Fire went into their body, killed them internally, but their bodies were still intact. So too over here, the way Sreifa is done is internal incineration, but the body remains intact. Okay, so that's the first of it. Tanakama. Then we learn Sreifa from Nadav and Avihu. Nadav and Avihu, remember again, also went ahead with whatever they did, like being close exactly what they did, but whatever they did was unsanctioned service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they were killed. So the Gemara says, just like by nothing that he fire incinerated them internally, but their bodies were intact. Afkan, Sreifas the Shama B'Gufkaim. So to over here again. So to over here by Sreifa, so internally, ultimately again, the incineration was internally, but the body remains intact. So it's funny on my talk. It's interesting. Everyone is agreeing on the concept that Sreifa is internal incineration. What's the Makar? Tanakama says Kola, but the Elazar says B'nei Aleph. So what's the Mazda with the Aleph Kola? Minole. So it's interesting. How do you know? The Torah tells us that the people who offered up the Torah were burned, but how do you know that it's this internal incineration? The Sid as Machtos HaChovim HaElah B'Nachshosam. Shenesmasham Nisrafesh the Good Kayom. So he's actually mentioned the B'Nachshosam. So he's actually again that ultimately again internally, they were their nefesh, so to speak, their soul, which means just their internal life was snuffed out, but ultimately again their bodies were remained intact. Do you go? The other thing, who doesn't know anything, they'll say, how he straight from Manish. No, they were literally burned. Umar B'Nafshosam. So what do in the pasuk says B'Nafshosam? Sheneschai B'Shrifa is B'Nafshosam. But they were kind of Shrifa ultimately again because of what they did. Right? Because of Iski Nafshosam. It wasn't Iski Nafshosam. Listen to this. Either Flakish. Somebody Flakish. My Tiksiv. Bechanti Elade Ma'ol Chorak Alai Shnimo. What does it mean? What's it? Look at Rashi. Rashi says over here. Bechanti Elade Ma'ol B'Shir Chalifas Shaligimos Ma'ol Shachila. The Yishman Korach also in this Kavimo. So it's how do you know literally in the Khalifa is flattery. So literally the pasuk over here is the words going from Dylan, the Khanti Ladimo Korach Shinimo. Because of the flattery that Korach showed to his followers. So Korach Alai Shinimo, he bears his teeth in a smile. And he is a reference to Gehenna. How did Korach go ahead and onboard his followers? Food and drink. He put out a nice spread in his tent. I don't know, whatever it's in Papas, whatever he did in the desert, right? He has to go ahead and he put out in the desert, and that's how he went ahead and he onboarded his followers through Khalifa. So in other words, it looks like when Khalifa does this, sometimes Khalifa speaks to the soul. Right? So in other words, everybody likes to go get about themselves. So when somebody goes ahead and flatters me, even if it's not real, it still feels good. Because of the Kaluba, that Korach went ahead and it was dual flattery. He flattered them, they flattered him, and because of this, again, the Sar showed Gehenna bared its teeth in a smile because Gehenna recognized it was going to get many more inhabitants. So, according to one who learned about Sreifa, the Sreifa is internal incineration from many hours. Where does he know that from? By a Muslim in Hashem. So, I say the Pasuk says by another than Abiyu that they died before Hashem. The verse saying that which is like keeping stuff. It was like death. What does it mean like? It was like a normal death. Now, what does it mean like a normal death? And the first thing, right? What's a normal death? The body is intact, but the internal processes stop working. That's a normal death. So another than Abiyu died, they died before I come by a musu, a regular musa, which means everything that happened to them was internal, but externally everything remained the same. The other thing will say, no, it's not true. Another than Abiyu were actually incinerated, totally incinerated. You might have said, by a musu, they actually incinerated. So what does it mean by a musu? It means that the incineration began internally and then spread externally. The Sanya, Rabbi Yossi ben Dostai Omer, another than Abiyu died. I was saying that, remember again, all the Pasuk says by another than Abiyu is by even with Hashem, by a musu. They came before Hashem, they came too close. Now again, there's a Roma focus exactly what it is that they did. So for our purposes now, the infraction is almost irrelevant. What matters is that they died and how they died. Now the Gemara says how they died. Two pillars of fire emerged from the Holy of Holies in Mishkan. They split into four. Two pillars of fire went into the nose of Nadav, two into the nose of Abihu, the Sarkam, and burnt them. That's how they died. So in other words, we were suggesting again, so the incineration began internally, but at least according to the other opinion, then went ahead and spread externally. The Pasuk says it consumed them. Some below big Gehenna. It consumed them, but not their clothing. See, according to the opinion that says that we're fully incinerated, it's only them and not their clothing. It's incredible. So we'll say, therefore, again, what we emerge with over here is the good news is everyone agrees, right? Everyone is in agreement. What is everyone in agreement about? That halacha says Sreifa is internal incineration. Right? Hence the process outlined in Mishnah. Where do you learn it from? Machlokas, similar from Korach. What is in Korach? One opinion not given up to you. Okay, so much the eye of the mirror, me part of honey strucking. So it's interesting. So why not learn it out from Karbanos? From part of honey strucking. So the Gemara says, we have like a paradigm for straight. We burn Karbanos, we burn Karbanos. So say that part of honey strucking, and then again, listen, generally, whenever we talk about part, it's the part of heaven, David Tzibor, part coin Mashiach. These are like sin offerings, right? Which are fully consumed. So why not learn out from Parman Esrafim? So if Parman Esrafim again, it's total incineration. Total incineration. To which the Gemara says, Mistabra is interesting. Mistabra ne Adam Chavilei Lelav, Shekin Adam Chodei Neshama Pickle. Because we'll say it makes more sense to learn out the din of Sreifa by people from Adam. Why? Because again, if you learn out from Adam, you have four elements. Number one, Adam, they both apply to people. Number one, they're both called Chodei, by sinners. Number three, there's an element of Neshama, right? The tongue's Lashon of Neshama. And number four, they're not subject to people. Okay, I'll say just the opposite. If Parman Esrafim have laser available. No, they're not Parman Esrafim. Why? Shekin Machshir L'Dolos. Because ultimately, again, like you have over here, is a machshir l'dolos. Ultimately, again, tell us, look at Rashi. It's almost right across the Rashi. Machshir, Sreifa is based in machshir, action, mitzvah, hamakom. So again, the action of Sreifa, the base in the death penalty, is what we call a machshir. It's a preparatory act. In other words, it cleanses the person. The thing Parman Esrafim. So to ultimately, again, Parman Esrafim. Sreifa, the honey, Shekar Mehem Mishamakom. The Sreifa by Korach and the Sreifa by Rabbi were not carried out by a Beis Din. They're carried out by Kadosh Baruch Hu. To which the Gemara says, Hanach Lefish. There are still more comparisons to Sreifa Beis Din, to other cases of people dying than to Purim. Man, you don't look at this Korach. My family, you don't look at me Korach. So we'll say, so the one who learns out from Hadis Korach, why doesn't he learn it out from Bnei Aaron? How Sreifa Mamish? Because he will say that by Bnei Aaron were actually fully incinerated. Fully incinerated. So you might say, Bnei left me. So okay, so if you want to, even if you want to say that Bnei Aaron were fully incinerated, so why not use that as a paradigm? Say that just like none of the Rabbi were fully incinerated, therefore what? What Sreifa means complete incineration. Rav Nachman Arabahu Amartav Yihafil Re'acha Kamocha Bar Lo Nisa Yacha. So let's say this keeps coming up over and over. Right? You have to love yourself like you love yourself, even in death, or even in the way that you have to kill him. Which means again, truth for him, let's say at least does what? It leaves a body for burial. Leaves a body for burial, doesn't be able to have a levaya, and as much as you're buried in a separate cemetery, as you saw, there's still never left. That's the incredible. But even after you could have nothing of Gzir Shalom, let's say the position of nothing. Why did Gzir Shalom at all? You love Gzir Shalom, Hava Mina, Shreifas Neshama, Buguk Kayan, Las Shreifa, because you were not. If I didn't have the Gzir Shava, I would have felt like this. That internal incineration with an intact body is not called Sreifa at all. And again, and without that, I would just say, because of the how do you control the Yaftecha Kamocha? Just add on more wood to the fire. Cause the fire to burn brighter, to burn more intensely, and therefore the person will die faster. Kamash Shmuel, no. Kamash Shmuel, the Yaftecha Kamocha means internal incineration will leave the body intact. Okay, so what's this? Therefore, I'm not telling myself, the bottom line takeaway is everyone is agreeing that Sreifa, the Nisas based on Sreifa, is internal incineration. That's internal incineration. And now the Gemara says to go, what's the mucker for that? So again, that's the machlokes. Is it Nadav and Avihu, or is it Korah? So ultimately, again, that's the machlokes. And interestingly enough, because of this machlokes, each opinion holds something different happened by the other. So for example, the opinion that says the Musar is Adas Korah, his followers hold that Nadav and Avihu were fully incinerated. And the opinion that says it's Nadav and Avihu holds that Korach's followers were completely incinerated. So fundamental machlokes of the historical machlokes, again, so machlokes about the source, but agreement about the halacha. Incredible. And now once the Gemara mentioned Nadav and Avihu, the Gemara tells a little bit of the story. The Kvar Hayu Moshe V'Aaron Mahalkim B'Derech. So the Gemara tells the story. In the desert, Moshe and Aaron are walking. So first of all, can you imagine just that scene? Like this being like a fly on the wall, and Moshe and Aaron are walking together. Imagine just what that must have looked like. So Moshe and Aaron are walking, and what happens? Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's sons, were walking behind them. Sorry. Because you saw and all the sons are walking by Nadav and Avihu. You know again, Nadav and Avihu were great tzaddikim. Amar Nadav Lavihu, a Masai Yamusu Shnei Zikinim Hamamu. So Nadav and Avihu say to each other, when are these two old men going to die? Speaking about Moshe and Aaron, when are they going to die? And you and me will go ahead and lead the generation. We'll lead the generation. So just there is so much to say about this Gemara. Like, what is this? What is happening over here? And I just want to point out something amazing. And this is just to go over how, like, the wisdom of Gemara. The Maharsha it's a long Maharsha, but he happens to have this discussion about the fact that Moshe's children did not inherit it. Right? Moshe's children essentially kind of fade away into obscurity. Right? We don't hear about them. We don't learn about them. They certainly do not become their father. And there's a lot to be said to that in general about the concept of being the children of a great person. On one hand, it could be a source of inspiration. On the other hand, it could be a tremendous source of difficulty. Not always living in your father's shadow, never really being able to live up to what he is or what he was. So just this idea over here, so another idea like this. Look, Moshe's kids are not taking over. Those kids are not taking over. and Aaron's kids, and we're Aaron's kids. And I will say, the Maharsha says something fascinating. They saw a fundamental flaw in Moshe and Aaron. On one hand, Moshe obviously wasn't mechanech his kids in the right way, because where are they? By the way, and a tremendous tie-in to the Gemara on the top of the daf that spoke about chinuch, right? Again, you gotta take ownership. Let's say, at the end of the day, you gotta take ownership for how your kids turn out. You don't have to take ownership necessarily for every single decision they made, but you absolutely need to own, to a very large degree, how they turn out to life. That's me. That's on me. Bein Latov, Bein Malach, that's on me. So when we're going to say Moshe, obviously Moshe, again, the chinuch is lacking. We're his kids. Right? Aaron, Dad, you're great. Listen to this. Dad, you're great. But you're only number two. And you are a career number two. So Moshe can't keep it together with his kids. Aaron, Dad, you're great, but you're only number two. I think it's time for us to step in. But I think at the end of the day, both of you are great in your own ways to a degree, but clearly neither of you have discovered the complete secret, right? The secret sauce, so to speak, right? You don't have the secret to success. So Chevra, maybe it's time for new ideas, new leadership, stand down. So the Gemara says, I want to make a response. Hanira Mikova Esmi. We'll see who's going to bury who. Right? We'll see who's going to bury who, and ultimately I'm going to do his character. I'll say it's terrible. I'm going to pop off. Hanira got me, she's great. But Rabbi says, people, there's a famous adage. What's the adage? Nisishi Gamni Sabi, Uni Moshli Zohadni. So I'll say the adage is like this. There are many old camels carrying the hides of young camels. Right? Sounds like kind of the out of there, right? But the idea is also like, a lot of times young people think they know everything, right? And yet, again, they know absolutely nothing. There's a lot of old camels carrying the hides of young camels. Right? But what I say again, sometimes the beauty of youth is an idealism and a recognition that, like, I feel like I can conquer the world. And I know everything. The challenge of youth is, I think I know everything. And sometimes, again, as we get older, we recognize that the truth is we don't know everything. We know very little. And the truth is there's much to be learned from people who are older than us. Even if they're not, quote unquote, as successful as we think they should have been. But what I said, there is wisdom that comes with age that youth simply does not have. Incredible Gemara. I'm not the says all the days. Is incredible Gemara. The word here, Talmud Chacham, be compared. He says, so let's say, so again, this is talking about the relationship between a Talmud Chacham and an Am Haaretz. How is the Talmud Chacham viewed by an Am Haaretz, by an Indian person? So the Gemara says, the Tila, double the Kiton Shalta. So in the beginning, right? So even an Am Haaretz sees the Talmud Chacham, ultimately again as a golden vessel. See every minute, get into this. When Talmud Chacham schmoozes with the Am Haaretz, over the Kiton Shal Kasef, his standing is diminished. I was like, I don't know, tell you, it's one of the words. I don't know why the word itself bothers me more than anything. Schmoozing. Right? What does schmoozing sound like? It's just like talking for the sake of talking. Why would anyone talk for the sake of talking? If you have something to say, say it. If there's something meaningful to discuss it. But if there's nothing to talk about, or there's nothing meaningful, you don't just shoot the breeze. There's no such thing. Shooting the breeze is a fundamental waste of time. If there's targeted conversation to be had, then have it. But not, again, nothing to do. It's a waste of time. So the Gemara says, this is incredible. If the Am Haaretz sees the Talmud Chacham shooting the breeze, what does that do? It diminishes the standing of the Talmud Chacham. Talmud Chacham doesn't shoot the breeze. He doesn't get together to have a schmooze, right? If there's something to talk about, let's talk about it. But if there's nothing to talk about, there's not a targeted discussion, then again, there are so many better things to do with one's time. So therefore, the Talmud Chacham schmoozes, shows the Am Haaretz that he doesn't treat his time seriously. It diminishes his standing in the eyes of the Am Haaretz. No. So listen to this. Once the Am Haaretz give something to Tam Chacham takes something from the Amal. So in general, human nature is when you give something to someone, so what's the automatic default is? You feel that person owes you something. That person is going. It's just human nature. That person is beholden to you. So once the Amaretz gives something to Tam Chacham accepts it. Then again, now the Amaretz feels that Tam Chacham is beholden to him, and his status is diminished even more. Ultimately, again, it becomes like an earthenware vessel. Earthenware vessel. Once you break it, you can't put it back together. So it's like just a tremendous idea, right? So in the beginning, that Tam Chacham is like a golden vessel. Tam Chacham schmoozes, just like shows that he does not take his time seriously. Takes something from the Amart. The Amart is like, I own you. For example, so much of the story. In Nisa Bas Tali, Bas Kodesh is Nisa. There was this girl. This was literally a person. Her name was Rasa Bas Tali. She was the daughter of a Kohen who lived back to the ability against the judge said that she was liable to death. Surrounded her with branches, and they burnt her. They burnt her. Amar Yosef Ta'abatarti. So Yosef says there are two mistakes that are made over here. Number one, something about Masna. The topic is right because of Masna. So they made a mistake about Rav Masna. Now remember again, let's say the Masna says that's not how you do Sreifa. Sreifa is not with branches. Sreifa is with lead, with molten lead. That's number one. That was the first mistake. The topic is Sanya. The Basal Kohen Malashofei Shei B'Anilahem. There's not Sheish Kohen Yish Mishpat. There's not She'ein Kohen Ein Mishpat. So we'll say, so the other mistake that they made was Beis Din is not empowered to administer a death penalty unless, of course, there's a Kohen, there's a Beis Hamikdash, there's a Sanhedrin. Salah again, just the two mistakes he made. Number one, he should have administered the death penalty altogether. That's number one. Number two, he did not administer the death penalty in the right way. Incredible. All right, I'm Rabbi my son last place is this. So Rabbi says a story. Now, this is the Mishnah. Right? The Mishnah says that in the Mishnah, Rabbi Elazar says there was a story of a Bas Kohen who committed adultery. They surrounded her with branches and they burnt her. And they said back to Rabbi Elazar, Barak Ben Sanok, that was a mistake of the Beis Din. So says the Gemara as follows. Amar Yosef, Beis Din shel Stukim haba. This was a Beis Din of Stukim. And then the said the Stukim were the ones who rejected Torah Shabbat. They took a very literal interpretation of everything. And our local might say, this was a Beis Din of Stukim. So the Gemara says, so let's say, so this is what he said, this is what they responded. Batanya, Amar Elazar Tzadok Zukrani, Keshayisi Tino, Umorka Baksiva Sha'ava. So originally because I remember when I was a child. Right? I was riding on my father's shoulders. And they brought a Bas Kohen committed adultery, surrounded her with branches, and they burned her. Talk about a traumatic childhood memory. And let's say, so again, I remember I was with my kid and my father on his shoulders, and they burned the Bas Kohen. So I said to him, okay, thank you, you were a child when you saw this, and a person who is very, we've seen this before, a person is not believed to give testimony as an adult about events they witnessed as a child. Right? That's the halacha. So number one, so therefore they kind of reject that story in its entirety. So the Gemara says, furthermore, Shnei Maisim Habi. Now look, the truth is, interestingly enough, there are two episodes. He saw this once as a child, and saw this once as an adult. The one we just mentioned over is one as a child. The one who's mentioned in the Mishnah is the one he saw as an adult. So the Gemara says, hey, which one did Rabbi Elazar would count first? The childhood episode.
I was just thinking about you. How you living, big dog? Gee, go fuck yourself.
So the Gemara says,
Gee. Can you hear me, big dog? Gee, what the fuck, man? Gee, what the fuck?
Which, by the way, it's redacted who it's from. Right.
So
So we don't know who it's from.
So again, if you're reading the adult one first, and they rejected it, they said that was a base in Torah. Would he go ahead and mention anything about what happened as a child? Rather again, okay, so here's how it happened. So the first time, when I was a kid, I remember that they burnt a bas kohen. They literally burnt her, and they said, come on, we're not listening to you. You're not believed to talk about as an adult events that you saw as a child. Then again, he saw the second time when he was a kid, when he was an adult. Then he related and he said, that was a basin that made a mistake. Okay, good. Mishnah, mitzvahs, nerogin. So let's say, so now we did that. That was all. That's the end of Sreifa. That's Sreifa. That's how they actually went ahead and carried out the din of Sreifa. Next, mitzvahs haneherogin. So let's say now we're up to hereg. Hereg means, bless you, decapitation. So how would they do this? The Gemara says, they would literally decapitate him with a sword. The Gemara says, first white line, the same way that the monarchy executes people. The monarchy actually take a sharp sword, you decapitate the individual. Rabbi says, that would create, Nivul means that would be a lack of respect to the dead. Just the messiness of decapitation is not going to be good. Rather, what do you do to make it a little bit cleaner? You take a wooden block, you put it in the ground, you tell him to lay his head down on the block, and you decapitate him with an axe. Does not seem to be much better. Right? They said, what are you talking about? Right? That's terrible. Right? That's a sword could be a lot cleaner. Sword could be a lot cleaner, a lot faster, a lot easier. This is a much, much uglier death. So Tanya, Rabbi says as follows: I know that using of the axe is not nice. I know that it's a not nice death. But what should I do? I would also prefer to.
Harley, he's a big shower of
the sword. But the Moshe is halacha. What's halacha? Which means do not follow in the ways of the Goyim. Do not follow the ways of the Gentile nations. And since the Gentile nations, when they administer capital punishment, they do decapitation by sword, we're not allowed to do it the same way.
So he's definitely talking
about the Rabbanon. So that's what we're talking about. No. When are you not allowed to follow in the ways of the Gentile nations? When we just want to replicate what they're doing. But if we're already doing the same thing, and we're doing something and they replicate it, following that standard practice is not considered to be Gentile replication. And therefore, Allah already says that by a sword in the Torah. So because He says it by us, we're allowed to do it even though they do it. If you don't say this, listen to this. So say, hey, remember again, there's an interesting halacha. We actually saw this reference earlier on in the week that Allah, so when a king dies, we burn the possessions of the king. We burn the possessions. And the logic behind that is because he's the king, no one else should use his stuff. Now, I will say it's interesting because that's what the Gentile nations do as well, as a sign of respect to the king. But yet we're allowed to do it. Why? Because essentially we had it first. So the Gemara says, so you see from here that anything that we were doing already anyway, even if it's done by the Gentile nations, we're still allowed to continue doing it. So the Gemara says, so therefore again, you see over here, like by the burning of the king's possessions, since we already had it first, we were doing it already, even the Gentile nations start to do it, it's not considered to be Gentile replication or emulation. So so over here, since it says sword, and we'll talk about this more, and we'll talk about this more later on, but since it says sword in the Torah, therefore again, death by sword is something we were already doing, and even the Gentile nations are not using it as well. It is not considered to be Gentile replication. I'm going to have to stop over here. I think I'm going to try to record the rest up until the Mishnah before Shabbos. So Shabbos we start the Mishnah. What a week, Shabbat, everyone. All right, everyone's doing good Shabbos, everyone. Good Shabbos, good Shabbos.
So, deductions-wise, where are you at? Like, what do I think? Yes. I
We can talk about that chat. You can see.
Like I'm enjoying. Okay. All right. So now the first clip we have is from the infamous BGL on Red Bar stream, which unfortunately we all have to tune into.
Okay, good morning. Today's daf is daf on Gimel 53. We're going to pick up on daf on Bays after Mishnah. Okay, so we've been analyzing the different forms of how Besson would administer a death penalty. So we've been talking about, we spoke about tefillah, stoning, about the streifa, the burning. We've spoken about the sayef for herod, the sword. And now we're going to analyze how Bezdin used to perform the misa of strangulation. So the Mishnah says, mitzvah hanachnakin, how did it work? How did they do kanek? Mishakin also bezevel arak kuborso. The same thing as we had previously, that they would put him into some kind of manure or some material up to his knees so that he wouldn't be moving around when this would happen. The note saying, Sudar Kachela Tolharaka, the Karachal Savaro. So they're similar to what we had. We spoke about this as one version in the Mishnah yesterday about the, how they would open the mouth of the person for streifa. So what would they do? They would put a hard cloth inside a soft one. We spoke about this yesterday, that the hard one is necessary. In that case, was to open the mouth. In this case, it was used to perform the tefillah. But the soft one makes it a nicer form so that it does not actually cause damage to the neck of the person. So you take the hard sudar and you put it inside the soft one and you put it around the neck. Then Moshe Cheslov is Moshe Cheslov. So each of the Eidim pull in the opposite direction. Until his soul goes out. Basically, he chokes. So that is the misa of panic of strangulation. So the pasuk is going to analyze. The Gemara is going to analyze the pasuk in Vayikra, which says as follows: the ish asher yinaf es eshes reyehu. So this is the classic source for adultery. A man that commits adultery with the wife of another man. Asher yinaf es eshes reyehu, that has performed adultery with the wife of your friend. Most yumas hanoef hanoefet, that both the man and the woman involved in this act of adultery, most yumas they get killed. So we're going to analyze this pasuk word by word. When it says ish asher yinaf, it's pras with katan. It's talking about a man, not a katan. So katan who would perform an act with a married woman would not be a case of Eshes Ish Minasara. Asher Yinaf is Eshes Ish. So the pasuk says that he performed adultery with the wife of a man, Ish, a man. This means to tell you not the wife of a katan, which Rashi explains to mean that this demonstrates that there is no kedushin by a katan. So if a katan performs an act or attempts to perform an act of kedushin with another woman, they're still not married, and if someone were to have a relationship with that woman, that's not considered an Eshes Ish. The pasuk says Eshes Reyehu. That it says Asher Yinaf is Eshes Reyehu. Prat le'Eshes Hacherim. So this comes to exclude that if someone has a relationship with someone who is married to someone who's not Reyehu, which would be a guy. So if a Jewish woman married a Goyish, a Gentile man, and then subsequently someone had a relationship with that woman, that she is not considered an Eshes Ish because she's not Eshes Reyehu because she's married to a non-Jew. Okay? Most yumas, the pasuk toward the end says, most yumas hanoef hanoefes. The Gemara says, b'chenek. So this means that you give her the misa of strangulation. Now the Gemara says, he says, you're saying it's chenek, but how do you know? Maybe it's one of the other misas. Maybe it's skila, streifa, herod. How do you know? So we say, Amr kol makom shenemer misa b'torah stam, ein atorah shel moshkel lahachmer elo lahachel elel. Divrei Rav Yoshia. So Rav Yoshia says, anytime it says in the Torah that you just kill someone, you cannot give that person you have to give them the lightest misa, because if the Torah doesn't designate a harsher misa, doesn't say, for example, skila or sreifa, so then all you can apply when the Torah just says to kill her, you have to kill him or her. You have to kill him or her with the misa that is the lightest. And so, what is the lightest misa? We know that at least according to Rabbanan, we'll get into that. Skila, sreifa, hereg, v'chenek. Chenek, strangulation, is the least chamor case of misa, and that's why Rabbi Yoshi says that's how you know that's what the Noef and the Noefes, the adulterers, get. Rabbi Yonasan says, Lo mitznei shehi kala, that the reason that we give Chenek is not because Chenek is the most kal. We'll see why he says that in a minute. Ella, rather, what's the reason that Chenek applies in the case of adultery? Because anytime, and we encountered this rule before, anytime that the Torah does not specify specifically what the misa is, then it's the misa of strangulation. How do we know that? So Rabbi Omer, how does Rabbi Yonasan know? Rabbi explains Rabbi Yonasan that Nemar Misa B'dei Shemayim and Nemar Misa B'dei Adam, that the concept of the word misa applies when the Rebbeinu Shalom brings about the death of someone, and it also applies the word misa when it is applied by Bezdin. Ma misa amur b'dei shemayim misa shem b'roshem. So just like when there's misa b'dei shemayim, and an ordinary person, a person gets, just dies, so there's no physical impact, or there's nothing that you see physically on the body. Misa amur b'dei adam misa shem b'roshem. So therefore, too, when it's by a person and it doesn't specify otherwise, it means the misa that has no rosha. What would that be? That would be strangulation. Now the Gemara asked, well, the aim of sreifa, because we just spent time yesterday talking about the fact that sreifa is the lead gets poured in the mouth, so that there should be only death on the inside and no recognizable impact on the outside. So maybe you should say that should be the punishment anytime the Torah doesn't specify. So the Gemara says it can't be sreifa. Why? Because because remember, what are we trying to figure out here? We're trying to figure out the misa of a noef and noefes, adulterers, right? And we say it's chenek. Now we say, well, maybe it should be straight, because that's another case where the death is not recognizable. The problem is, we know that the Torah took out a bas kohen from the ordinary category of someone who is an adulterer, and said a bas kohen gets something worse. What do they get? They get sreifa. So therefore, a regular adulterer must be that they don't get sreifa, and therefore they get chenek. So what we're learning out basically is that in order, according to the way Rabbi explains for Yonasan, anytime the Torah doesn't specify the misa, it's chenek. Why? Because we have misa b'dei shemayim and misa b'dei adam, and it has to be a misa that is not recognizable in the body. So that leaves us two choices: sreifa or chenek. We say it can't be sreifa because we know that a regular adulterer, which is the pasuk we're darshaning, it has a different or lesser punishment than a bas kohen. A bas kohen gets sreifa, so therefore it must be that the simplest punishment and the one that a noef and noefes get would be chenek, would be strangulation. Okay, topic in Gimel. There's some of the Rabbi Yonasan to become a fire Rabbi Taima. So he says, okay, so Rabbi Yonasan, we know that Rabbi explained the reason because you learn misa b'dei shemayim, misa b'dei adam. Elo Rabbi Yoshia, but according to Rabbi Yoshia, reminds it a chenek v'olam. So he says, so Rabbi Yoshia basically said we need to give the lightest misa, right? So the question is, how do you even know that there is a misa of chenek? Why? Because the Torah specifies skila, sreifa, and hereg. All of those are referenced. But it never references chenek, it never references strangulation. So your only basis of saying what should we do when the Torah doesn't otherwise specify the punishment, so if the Torah only specifies stoning, burning, and sword, so a masayif, I would tell you that should be sayif. In other words, why does he say, if all we're saying is it's the lightest punishment, then it should be sword, because we don't know about chenek. Rabbi says, our misas, Gemara, the fact that there are four misas, skila, sreifa, hereg, v'chenek, is the halacha l'moshe misinai. And then once we're left with the fact that there's all four, and Rashi explains that once there's all four, and we know that there's chenek, and we know that the Torah didn't specify chenek for anyone, so it must be, it can't be that chenek is chamor, because otherwise if it was chamor, the Torah would have to specify. So from the fact that the Torah never specifies chenek, but yet we know it exists from a halacha l'moshe misinai, it must mean that Chenek is the lightest of the punishments, and therefore, anytime the Torah doesn't specify, according to Yoshia, according to Yoshia, you cannot give a harsher penalty, so you have to give the lightest penalty, hence the rule that anytime the Torah doesn't specify that we give the punishment of strangulation. Now, Rabbi Yonatan said to Rabbi Yoshia, Lo mipnei kala. So he said, not because, and Rabbi Yoshia said, you give the lightest, the most lenient misa, and therefore, what is that? That's chenek. So Rabbi Yoshia said, no, that's not the reason. Why did he say that? So if we remember, Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah held that chenek was more.
To be the original Terminator. Now, I wasn't supposed to say this, it was meant to be a secret, but Reptile was meant to be the original Terminator. If not for that, if not for the agent, I got misunderstanding, Reptile would be the original Terminator. That's why he's got the music, that's why he knows exactly what's going on, and that's how he knew, people didn't realize this, he knew International Time was going to come on stage. Sort of an upright, because I know you want to do 5 minutes and 55 seconds. Here's a true story, which is crazy. It was supposed to be like the Chris dude. He was supposed to be looking after Sarah Connor, and it was Cameron who said, "Bro, you need to be the Terminator." And he's like, "I don't want to be the bad guy." He's like, "Fucking trust me, bro." And he doesn't even talk English, dumb fuck. You've got to be the bad guy. Now take your clothes off and come walk up in the camera, and then fucking come and be the bad guy. And it was a smashing success. It was the only time Arnie played the bad guy, which shows you how much he looked after his own career. Well, fucking, if you don't know Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're not welcome here, mate. I don't care if you push the vaccine. We love Arnold Schwarzenegger so much, mate. We obsess over Arnold Schwarzenegger. We beep over Arnold Schwarzenegger. You want to beep Arnold Schwarzenegger. We want to beep Arnold Schwarzenegger. I love Arnold Schwarzenegger. 5 minutes and 55 seconds, man.
Reptile, that go is Jurassic Park for you. You will play a good role in there. Listen, he makes dinosaurs look good.
Goes to the shop for 5 minutes and 55 seconds, mate. Anyone?
It's like, what do you think about it?
It's like, bro, are you there, mate? The shop's open, bro. Oh, yes, sorry, bro, there's fucking hurry up, fucker.
Well, I'm trying to.
Dead serious, bro, like,
There are times I try
Really? He's no good in this particular format. And he's retarded. X-Face is so good. Exactly. You know, some dumb fucks are like, he's just out of his league in this genre. Well, I'd put you in the top 10, mate. You're an amazing man. I swear to God, I'm not coming back for 5 minutes and 55 seconds. Mute your mic, mate. That doesn't apply to, shut up, international. Hold on. Preston is a legend. He can run any space. He does interview spaces. He does a lot of different spaces. He's a fine young man, absolute legend. Nothing but respect. And international, I just got a DM saying, I'm going to say it too, but Preston exhibits better traits than you and even me have. That's how good Preston is. Preston's fucking amazing. The shit that he does, all the work that he does, you know what I'm saying. We love Preston. We come here and joke around, but he is really a very special person. I put him like in the top 3, bro. He's joking, man. Easily. And you and me aren't even in the top 3, bro. Correct. He's there. We are like take over, bro. We are like in the top 3 in your opinion. We are like Preston's up there in the top 3 of Australian dudes that represent us properly. I've got an important announcement. I just got a DM saying that International Times is actually from Pakistan. International. That's legit. That's 100% correct. Are you from Pakistan? Where are you from? You sound exactly like you're from Pakistan, yes. Where are you from? Oh, what part of Pakistan? The good part? You're from the area of the Taliban is not an area, my friend. When did you learn geography? Well, what area? What is the name of the region? You just like stand-up comedy because you are fucking hilarious. Like you could be probably one of the world's best stand-up comedians. Maybe before we do that, the Taliban might have been some sort of reaction against this shit. At least they work for heroin reproduction. At least they were restricted from purists. Shout out to the Taliban, bro. They didn't do 9/11.
Until they're called Taliban, not Taliban, everybody's included.
I don't like those beards, but those beards are fucked up. That's really bad shit. You gotta shave that shit off.
The international sounds like it's
Well, I see that shit too. So fast forward. Here's the nations that conquered the world that putting up with this shit, including fucking prayers. Reptile was international pretending to be from Africa. Don't get me started, mate.
I thought we're telling you his best follower from
He's Pakistani. Yeah, he's pretending to be from Africa. That's what he said. Take over, bro. Sorry, man. International, you may speak.
Yeah, now you guys are going to think like I'm some kind of Indian.
because you're speaking in an Indian accent.
Translation, you're Indian. What's your Ethereum address? I just fucking did a meme coin at 10x, mate. What do you want?
Be sure turning it off and turning it back on.
Copy and paste your Ethereum address to my DMs right now and I'll send you fucking 0.08 Ethereum. Dead serious, man. I'm a DJ, bro. I have to do this. It's like revelation of the method, mate. I have to do this. It's druidic religion. Send me your fucking address right now. You won't be the only one, man. Many dudes have gotten the package from Reptile. Send me your address. You got 5 minutes. He's off the charts in some classes.
Definitely. Can you take over again, son?
Of course, yeah, we want to, you know, I'm actually feeling a bit tired of something. I'm going to select international. Go ahead.
And Mr. Reptile, so the last time when I had a conversation with Mr. that I thought he was like a what he's not going to get here.
Let me tell you, man. I've been dealing with a lot of stress sometimes. If you get him, sometimes lead him. Sometimes you can do spaces for hours. He's always on guard, bro. The truth is, man, don't get triggered by him or be that. I want to talk about you, bro. How you doing, brother? What do you do for a living, right? Indian people are very successful, do you know? They literally made more PhDs than Michael. We've even got graduates. They're smart dudes, bro. Very smart. Yeah, me too, man. Have you tried that cheesy garlic naan?
Yeah, Reptile, you're going to find out if they got their degree in Australia or in India. Because, for example, in Italy, you can get your driver's license just by paying the instructor money. You don't even have to get the car. So, not all
Put it this way, man, you would have been better importing lots of fucking Indians rather than Muslims. That's the truth, too.
Very strong European.
Plus, they make really good fucking broken Josh, mate.
Speaking of Rogan Josh, I'm going to go in a little bit Reptile. I'm just going to pump in some more Say You're a Legend. I love the Instagram for about 5 minutes. I'm going to head off.
Fucking really appreciate you, mate. 3 minutes and 33 seconds, mate. 3 minutes and 33. Take it away, brother.
3 minutes and 33 seconds. I think Mr. Pakistan wants to say it. Go ahead, Mr. Pakistan.
Mr. Pakistan.
Also known as Mr. B. Are you Big B or Little B? International. Oh, he's got a bit shy. This sometimes happens to people on stage.
It's a B, it could be a little B.
Yeah, sometimes on stage people get more performance anxiety. He was speaking for a little bit, and now he's having trouble performing. But don't worry, International, we enjoy you. Go Ryan Carter Purple Film. I want people to leave a comment. Give International some encouragement. Tell him that you like him. Tell him that you've enjoyed him. Tell him you're doing well. It's okay. You did your best. And let's give him a bit of encouragement. Let's try to get him back, open his mic up, and give a little bit more contributions before I head off. Because it was, the stuff I was hearing there, absolutely epic, off the charts, very cogent, very perspicacious, and I loved it. It was interesting that people would pick up on. He was doing an Indian accent, but with a Pakistani dialect. So he was speaking English with an Indian accent and a Pakistani dialect. That is very, very odd. I know a few people.
Stop, bro. Stop it. No, there's no Pakistani dialect there, man. This is an English trained Indian dude, bro. Come on, man.
I do see Mr. Mark.
Let me ask you something. It's like, if you had to be an emoji, which emoji would you be? Because I know the emoji that I'm thinking of. What emoji would you be?
I would be the strangling emoji. So renake and choke both books in either a body triangle or a straight box.
You're with me. We've been over this.
And it's called Banda de Leon, which means choke the lion. So I would be the renake and choke emoji.
The burning and choke emoji. Haven't you, my favorite?
I don't think that's does anyone else? You know what I think you would be? The brain emoji, bro.
The brain or the salam?
The brain emoji. For different reasons, mate.
What do you think reptile emoji is?
The lizard man, the lizard and the crocodile. Every single post we do has the lizard and the crocodile. I invented this shit. I created this shit. Really?
Well, thanks for giving up the answer.
Let's go to the one and only Sue. Have you ever been waiting this long, Sue, brother? Are you there? Because we have no hands up. If you want to talk, guys, jump in. Let's have a proper conversation. Let's have no hands, but let's do it properly. We've got really good speakers up here. Yeah.
story about the Battle of Working Lane?
I can tell by your accent, you're
She's from Australia.
I had a word with me last week.
I'm from Brisbane.
Say that too, like all jokes aside. Sue, are you serious about this shit? Because I can get serious. Susie, I'm talking about the oldest culture in the fucking world, which is the Australian Aboriginal culture, mate. 60,000 years. You can go to Africa and find paintings and other things 50,000 years max. There's literally cave paintings and shit in Australia 60,000 years old. My poets told the full story about, not the full story, but many stories about where we all come from and how it works. And it's like, we're both from places far, far away, bro. No, I'm dead serious. It's like I appreciate it. It got me thinking about what you talk about with IQ and stuff. Who these original inhabitants of Australia really were is fucking very, very important, man. It could be a key part of what I'm talking about. I've only just started to realise this because, believe me, I'm an arrogant fuck too. I've got connections around where I live. I've been studying lots of different shit for a long time, and I'm just like, seriously. The Australian Aborigines, man, knew this shit back to front. They were the first peoples on this planet, man. They truly fucking were. You had a dude there who would be fucking kicking off. I don't know, what's that dude? Usain Bolt couldn't do shit compared to these dudes. Dead serious. I live like right around here. I can tell you some stories and connections and things that I know. It's absolutely astonishing, bro. It really is, man. Right in our backyard there. It's amazing, man. It's fucking astonishing. And you can call me crazy, but I really believe that at least a basic understanding of the past is absolutely essential to us moving forward. Now, how do we talk about it? We're going to get drowned out. You're about to get alien spacecraft. You're about to get all this shit. Everyone's going to be talking about it all the time. X ain't like it used to be. X was always a scam. Now, it's really a scam, mate. I can go into a space and just listen to it for fucking like 5 minutes max. I have to leave. What the fuck? I went in hit slap spaces the other day. I listened to that because he's got a pop-up space. He's listening to different topics. They're all talking about all this different shit. They're talking about fucking different animals, different IQs. The conversation's flowing. It's beating, it's bumping, it's pinging, it's bumming. But you losers thought that you knew. You never even did the right shit. It's like we'll never say this, but I'm telling everybody. You never even did anything that was worth anything. And sit there in your own fucking delusions. All the dudes fucking look back on it and just think, what the fuck? And hit slap from brother to brother. I hope you don't become one of these dumb fucks, hit slap, because you're seriously, man, one of the only dudes that I know who isn't a fucking piece of trash. Dead serious, bro. As I recall, you've always been very reasonable. We've made everyone else sad. We all respect you. He respects you. You're a legend. Great into his diligence, always in here as well. And he doesn't go into many spaces, so there's only one reptile hybrid that on the only here.
He's very original. I appreciate that statement.
The same diligent denizen that was promoting Donald Trump less than 6-8 months ago.
I call him double D's.
I actually miss that space by YouTube. I'd like to disagree with something that I catch up with another episode.
So I got
Look who's fucking you, bro. Diligent or head slap. Diligent Dennis is under a lot of stress. I know Diligent Dennis is like, tell me what you did, and I'll send Diligent Dennis a message. And say, fuck off, mate. You deserve it. International isn't the international. Stop, bro.
Diligent strategy is
Tom Fly. What did you say to Diligent Dennis, bro? Why did he block you? Don't lie to me again.
He asked for a bag of rice.
Don't lie to me. Stop lying! Stop lying! Seriously. Just tell me what you did. Let me guess. Diligent's got a friend. Jamaica, mate. He's trying to. He's in there, mate. I heard him the other day. He needs to go to bed, mate. He's on the journey. He's doing diligent denizen journalism. And he's like, he can't even talk. Cat, don't tell me my son this shit. Diligent denizen is also coming up to the T road. He doesn't know about the fucking road that I'm talking about. I tried to tell him. Same as Kuma. They don't know about the crossroads, mate. See, we've already taken that. I took the crossroad on beam up back there like 18 months back. You're going to end up with me, dude. It's fucking horrible. Really bad. But soon, it'll make sense to you. And Hit Slap is a very decent person, let me tell you that right now. And I joke around about Diligent Dennis. Diligent Dennis is a fucking awesome person, too. I'm fucking privileged. I'm lucky to know these dudes. Don't ever fucking think what we do is anything like you do. And Hit Slap, one thing that you do appreciate is that we're always in control. Don't ever think what we're doing is what they're doing, because what they're doing ain't what we're doing. And what you're doing is like what the other people are doing, and what the other people are doing ain't like what I'm doing. And if I'm doing what they're not doing, then I don't want to be what they're doing. You know what I mean, brother? Yes. I'm fucking dead serious, mate. In the future, anyone coming up and talking my space now and wants to fuck around with me, I know exactly what's going on. And unfortunately for me, those people fucking betrayed me, man. Really betrayed me. Some people are just so fucked up they don't even know that they're betraying me. It's just like, this isn't worth anything. But soon you'll know. Jacqueline, jump in, Jacqueline. We need some women here. Let's go, Jacqueline. Mr. Reptile, please, what is Reptile, do you remember when the people talking shit about you? You got a lot of recording, you wanted them into space, and then you played the recording. That was epic. That was a tough say. Here's the truth between me and you, man, because I really wish you all the best. We haven't interacted. Here's the truth between me and you, man, from the bottom of my heart. Hit Slap, you listen to me, man. I had 2 or slap, same as you. Really bad stuff. And it's nothing personal, bro. Sometimes it's to do with alcohol and drugs. It's like most of it's to do with jealousy and things that haven't been done and people want to do. And this is a thing that dudes like you and me, and you might think we've been sanctimonious pricks here. Maybe we are, but I'll speak for us both. We both came here to just have some fun, talk to different people around the world, be an arrogant prick in not too much of an extent, but we're both, sure of ourselves, doesn't matter. You have to be to be a space safe. And there's nothing for Reptile, there's nothing for Hit Slap. And it's like, I have no friends on this platform, bro, but I know I think you're a decent person. And for you to come into this space means a lot to me. It's on record. And I love you, bro. Hopefully sometime, bro, I'll scratch your back as well, because I love you, mate. Same as you, I'm frantic, same as all of you people. Yana hasn't spoken yet, but Hit Slap. Everyone's a fucking piece of shit, and for us to double even in this platform is really out of our realm. It's disgusting. Everyone's a really bad person. It's bad, bro. It's bad. It's horrible, bro. I don't know, bro. I'm gonna shut the fuck up. Go ahead, Slap. Mine was a few months ago, and something a couple of people turned on me a few months ago, and I don't know, it was very, very strange. I would just say, when you said envy and jealousy, this is it. When you said there's people hating on Elon Musk, when you said there's people hating on Joe Rogan, they wish they had what he had. They wish they could do what he could do. They don't have the brains of Elon Musk. They don't tell Joe Rogan. So they just hang from a distance. And I don't know what happened with you, but I assume it's something similar happened with me. Probably envy and jealousy and unmet needs, and this causes people to behave very strange, very childish, and very indecorous. I'm sorry that happened to you, brother. I'm not talking about being honest like this. Again, I'm not being pointed. But dudes close to me, it's like, I want to ask you, mate, and I'll never talk about it again. Dudes who ain't co-hosting and stuff with me, not hatred towards me, but ultimately hatred towards me sometimes for no fucking reason, man. And I'm not going to give alcohol a excuse. I'm not going to give somebody who fucking is so assured of themselves because he said this to me. They don't understand the damage that they're causing. And the truth is, it's this whole social media game is deeper than any one person, but we don't know what we're dealing with. We really don't. And all that I'll say to you is, please be yourself. I'll be myself. I want to tell you this: don't look up to any person.
This guy talks so fucking much.
And we're better than those dudes. You know what I'm saying, bro? Don't ever fucking succumb, because you might be one of the only dudes who could have come here this time to hear what I'm saying. Don't succumb to the cum.
Don't sink in the cum. You come in the sink.
Reptile, I think it works best when each person has their own thing. If you purpose with someone, you've got your own thing, they've got their own thing. That way it's not like there's no confusion. I think exactly! It's keeping it in house. It's the stories that I told about the restaurant where I know where the ingredients come from. I know where the salad comes from. I know where the meat comes from.
all I put in the comments to vote on. And please, next time, reptile, do not stay away for too long, because the longer you stay out, the crazier you become. But we still love you.
Hey, here's the truth, man. I've been gone for I think it's been a week since I've spoken, something like that. I've had so much bad shit. And so, I tell everybody this, just for the record, with people here, really like so much bad shit happened in the last 3 to 4 days. I'm just like, you can't make it up, man. I don't deserve that. I really don't. It's nothing personal against anybody. But in the future, it has to be, it has to be, man. Now, I like to believe in ladies first, then we'll go to the international tour. It's a big account. They've been doing some good work. But I'll tell you right now, mate, Jacqueline, you're a lovely lady, Jacqueline. You know what, Jacqueline, let me tell you, mate, I'm being dead serious because I don't fuck around. You've got balls. Which means you've got strength, you've got courage, you're actually a very, very strong woman. Now, very, very strong women are important to what's about to happen. So if we're ever about to change anything, it has to be led by very, very strong women, which are hard to find. Jacqueline's one of them. Jacqueline, go for it, don't hold back. Because people don't know that the reptilians rule all the female entities, mate. It's always been, it hasn't always been that way. It's historically.
What's your sign, reptile? If you don't let me ask you, you're a Scorpio.
Cancerian.
It's
13. Jacqueline, you know what I'm talking about. The truth is there's so much nuance there. The shit you've done with the families have been murdered. Whoever's talking that shit's getting dropped out. Jacqueline, how could I deal with what the guys are dealing with in South Africa, mate?
He's a weird
Breaks my heart. She's amazing. Jacqueline, go for it.
To what this Pakistani said to you earlier on about you being the past and he being the
That wasn't a Pakistani man. I know lots of Pakistani. I'm friends with people. Many Pakistanis that I know are good people. Let me tell you.
That was an Indian dude pretending to be
Pakistani, I want to travel around Pakistan. I'm doing some shit. We got some Pakistani connections, mate, from Pakistan to Mumbai. And in fact, what they don't want to hear is that the Indians and the Pakis, the true Indians and the Pakis, very, very similar, mate.
It's because of the partition.
I'm going to be there on the partition that you talk about is an ancient history, so far beyond what we talk about, even the Sumerian culture, the New Testament culture. And then I hung out with him for the first time in 1999. I've been to his boat that he had in Georgetown, the Bahamas. I've been to his house in Belize. I've been to these locations. He was a very good friend. He might
How
be
do you
alive.
go to these places, and what are you doing at these places?
I booked him internationally. I worked with different record labels.
Well, you just stop. What's Belize? What's Belize?
Belize is a country. It's where John McAfee was held for trial for murder. He hired some dude to hang out his boat with plastic
Did you do any interviews with him? Any interviews? Okay, can you put links in
I would love to, but after he died, can you make this up? I swear my child's life is a
Stop.
All of my emails, not just him, but I think Gabby as well, got
Stop.
like the hundreds of emails, they were wrong. And I didn't do it. That's because of that. I swear my child's life, ask me.
Stop. Somebody ask a question. Have you ever experienced that? Ever?
Yes, with Isaac Gabby.
Only those two?
Only those two. It was Isaac Gabby.
What happened? Explain it to everyone. I believe you. It's
all of my emails and all of my messages.
they're listening to everything we say.
Of course they are. If they didn't track me, I wouldn't be able to do a good
I'm
job.
actually a part of it too. It's disgusting. It's horrible. I've also sold that I've done things that I wish I didn't do them. Now I have to do this. Everyone I'm associated with is a scumbag. I have no friendships here. Everything I say should never be taken seriously. If you take it seriously, you really are a dumb fuck listening. I'm almost a very dumb fuck listeners. That's what you are. And if you're thinking, I've left all of them, and he wouldn't be doing that, he's making jokes, he's being nice. I have nothing to do with any of you people. I don't like you.
As your future ex-wife, my child.
I'm responsible for what I say. You're all nothing to me. Never forget that. You're absolutely nothing to me. One of you. Truth.
That's because you're not a motorboating enthusiast. If you're into motorboating, you would like me a lot more.
Dude, this girl is funny as fuck.
Or sailboats.
Yeah, so Mr. Rabbi, can you get
Let's see if you can do 5 minutes and 55 seconds, because everyone else has failed. Ladies and gentlemen, he could be from Pakistan, he could be from India. We don't fucking know, but I'll tell you what, he's from a place that you don't know about. And whoever he's going to talk about, it's irrelevant, but listen to what he's talking about. Because I can tell you right now, he's smarter than most people, including myself. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing a very special friend of mine. Go, Brad.
Yeah, so earlier you said that Mr. Rabbi about the and I think the loyalty is what we the next level artists get look at the history of all the dramas.
Stop there, you're 100% right, but let me tell you what you're talking about is it's one after the other betrayal. But one of the real things that have had traction, bro, that have lasted generations, man, that's the shit. Religions, and maybe a few other things, bro. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but if you see the history of the world, even when trouble is
too good for too long, mate. You need some real energy. Come on. Take him out. If you've been watching some sort of sitcom for too long, bro. Do you mind if I ask what country you're from? Let me guess, mate, somewhere in July, somewhere around this region. But soon, motherfucker, you'll understand what I'm talking about. This or that, that's how we roll. He's lying. Just a heads up. I'm a man. You guys will all be there in the high-tech cities, the most high-tech countries like Dubai. Even places like Saudi Arabia going, I'm so safe. Have you been to a club? That's what I'm really talking about. You fucking low-class people who don't understand what I'm talking about. Not me, mate. If you're in Dubai with $100 million thinking, I'm so fucking epic, man. Maybe go listen to some other dumb fuck spaces. How about that? Go listen to some garbage. How many people? Left turn is the right turn. The worst thing you take the right turn is the left turn. I can't even pick it right. Nobody can pick it. But don't associate reptile hyper with any single one of you people ever again. For the record, man. Dead serious. I've said too much already. Don't ever associate what I ever did with what you did. As we go to Mr. R, he's not there, mate. Mr. R, you're not there, bro. Is that right? Let's mix up the conversation. I want to have a good conversation. I'll go as hard or as long as you losers want to go for, but the ball's in your court. Let me just whack it there, ready? Go, bro. Okay. I'm up here. Thank you. You're stuttering it out. What the fuck you gonna say? You've literally had fucking at least over an hour it is. You couldn't write something in your phone. I know you're on your phone. You couldn't put in fucking notes.